the goals are for the city. What direction are we supposed to be going in? Little changes can always happen, but you need a general direction so that your staff can make those decisions and so that you can make those decisions when rezonings come forward or certain different types of agreements or even interlocals with the county or TxDOT. When you have identified projects and priorities for your community, you have a place at the table with other people to talk about things because you've talked it out for yourself before. So in this sense, for communities today more than ever, if you fail to plan, you really do plan to fail because you're going to get lowest common denominator if you don't step up and say what it is that you want. And Julie mentioned this earlier, and the city does need a playbook. I mean, without a set of plays, football team's just a bunch of guys throwing ball, running around on the field. If you don't have plays, if you don't have a playbook, how's your wide receiver going to know where to go? If you don't have a playbook, what does your lineman need to know how to do to protect his quarterback? So there's a real sense in which the plan functions in this capacity. It's coverage for you when you make decisions that they're not completely arbitrary. They're done based on a rationale and based on priorities and goals for your city. And it helps staff to say no or to say yes to things because public has given input, it's been taken into consideration, and the plan supports certain priorities that have been identified. And as Julie mentioned, I mean, growth, I put growth as coming, it's kind of already here. All of these projects in yellow are subdivisions as of last year that were at some stage of planning or development. Some of them have already been built, some are just in paperwork process. A lot of this is north of 171, which is a huge problem for you because of the railroad track crossings that are needed to get access from those people to 171. As 171 strips out with commercial, all of those people living north get funneled, and choke points occur at Pearson and North Main if you leave things the way they are now. So there's a real need to look at ways of organizing and planning for some non-residential stuff on the other side of the tracks. And there's a real need to figure out how to let your transportation system accommodate all this new growth so that you don't exacerbate those choke points. The Hoppers plan addresses a range of things. It's not just about lot size. It's not just about residential. It's about sidewalks, safe routes to school. I mentioned transportation and intersections. It's about economic development priorities. It's about sales tax. It's about sidewalks. It's about water and wastewater capacity. And it's about land use guidance for every single type of use. So industrial use, commercial use, residential, a bunch of different things. So it's got a long-range perspective. This plan was written for a 20-year plan horizon. Nobody has a future, can't see the future through a crystal ball, but based on population projections that were done, trends that are on the ground right now, and those subdivisions that are at some stage of development, we have an idea over the next 20 years of the general types of things that are coming here. So you need a plan for how to absorb that and manage that. The plan sets the course, but even the last page in the plan lays out guides for how the plan itself gets updated and amended, and that's not something rare. Your plan is going to be amended. We have already talked about certain things that would probably need to be amended within the next month already. So amendments are an ongoing process. Major updates are a little less infrequent, probably maybe every 10 years, maybe sooner if you grow really fast. Hopefully not, because nobody wants that. So that's kind of the idea, is it can be amended when and as needed, but there needs to be some rules for how that happens. And then major updates would be needed when there was game-changing conditions that occur. I wanted to come back to this a little bit. Based on all of the survey feedback, the forum input, and then working with the steering committee, we spent a lot of time kind of wordsmithing a vision for the community. And everybody seemed to think that it was important that Godley be portrayed as a friendly community and known for its small town roots, strong schools, and safe neighborhoods. And vision statements like this are so important because it helps to keep us on track when we move forward about what are those anchoring values that we want to see permeate how we spend our money, how we staff, how people greet people when they come in and they need services, how these meetings are run. Where should budget items, where should the focus be for that? If it says strong schools, how are we working with the school district? How are we supporting their efforts? Safe neighborhoods, how are we building neighborhood solidarity and promoting neighborhood safety? So these types of high-level vision statements are really important. And this really was a driver for everything that followed in the plan. We talked about amendments and updates. You do need some type of guidance even for that, so plan for changes to the plan. But minor amendments are things that staff can do. So I mentioned there's a property in question. I don't know when we need to get into it, but in your extraterritorial jurisdiction, last legislative session, a law was passed laying out a procedure by which a property owner in your extraterritorial jurisdiction may petition for release from your extraterritorial jurisdiction. And so I don't know, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that now. So your comprehensive plan today includes property that has already been released by operation of law. So we spoke about that a little bit last comprehensive plan discussion. I raised the issue that did they get the letter? Have we verified the petition? And so I did receive a letter from their attorneys at Winstead, and it explains when the petition was filed, 45 days to act on it, and so by operation of law, the properties are released. So your plan already, and that's the point that she's making with the changes in law, with the movement in the ETJ, some of these things that we're gonna be seeing ongoing, your map is gonna be changing a lot, unfortunately, and that's just the nature of the beast right now with the way the statutes have been changing. So there's opportunity for these, and this would be the River Hills Real Estate LLC and Lionwood Godly tracts. There's opportunity for those to come back into the city. And when I spoke with the developers, after receiving this letter, they contacted me. They did express interest in coming back in. So just, I mean, part of that though is, you know, you're gonna see growth, ongoing growth, all throughout the city, and that's the whole point of the comprehensive plan, to kind of address, you know, how that's gonna work. And unfortunately now with the way the law is, you're gonna have people leaving the ETJ, coming in, you're gonna have annexation, voluntary annexation, with the ETJ expansion, so I think there's lots of opportunity for the plan to be amended.
Yeah. And we did put a provision in there. One of the reasons, we'll get into it later, but the things that look sometimes simple are usually really, really complicated, but the art is to make it not look so complicated. But land use planning now, a lot of cities aren't even planning outside of their city limits because of this issue. They're just planning for their city limits, but your growth is happening outside. And so from the beginning, this has had to be a really complicated plan, honestly. And how do you regulate an ETJ when that could always be changing? So we set up the land use plan to set points where they join. Those probably won't change, and then anything out, your districts will radiate outwards. So there's a few of them in the core of the city that are going to be relatively fixed. And then as the ETJ changes and expands and contracts, the map changes will be pretty intuitive. There's not going to be a lot of fuzziness. And so I tried to set it up so that staff could make those kinds of changes. So let's say in 3 months this happens to 4 of the properties. You don't have to call me every single time. Staff can do that. And so we've really tried hard to set this land use plan up to where it can respond to this kind of swinging door policy that the state has kind of created for cities regarding their boundaries, because they will change. And you don't want to have to do a plan, like, you don't want this constant major amending process. Should be efficient, basically. And so I'm hoping that it can happen because of that. So just mark that. There's probably going to be a few things like that we know need to change. To me, y'all are the drivers of this. But Mr. Mayor, to me, I was thinking, let's figure out what in here we think needs some work. And if there are small clerical things like this map change of parcel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, page 35 needs to say he instead of she. If there's a small list of things like that, if we can phrase maybe the motion to accommodate, pending those changes. If the list is too long, maybe what we can do is give you guys maybe a week to pull together your thoughts, and then I can come back maybe mid-January with all the changes made. So I would think those would be the 2 easiest options, and I'll just follow your lead with what you think would work best. Quick review of process again. We started about a year ago. First city thing was in March. But we did do our homework first. And so your consultants did a pretty extensive analysis of infrastructure systems, development landscape, the history of the city, and population growth trends. We spent a lot of time getting information from people through different venues. We did some as anonymous, which I always think is the best because people can say what they want without fear of repercussion. So we have anonymous inputs through the surveys. Then we have forum groups, and then we had the steering committee. All of that visioning came together. We drafted the plan components based on that. And each plan component, you guys don't have a lot. Small town, you're just now growing. This is your first comprehensive plan, so we didn't want to give you like just unnecessarily huge plan. We focused on land use, transportation, and utilities. And then we're in the adoption phase right now. As we mentioned last time, the website had over 150 subscribers. We had over 200 surveys completed, spread over 7 surveys. We reissued one of those surveys just to make sure we were getting clear information. We did it so we could get county input and city input. So we sent out a lot of surveys. Our virtual forum, we had 6 separate Zoom meetings open to everyone in the city who wanted to participate. And then we did town hall kickoff meeting and then the open house, of course, in November. And at each stage of this, we had about 30 people, which is a pretty good sample size for a city your size. And then oversight by the project steering committee. I just want to commend and express just the level of effort that our steering committee put into this. They participated, and I think it ended up being 9 virtual meetings. You know, so every week gave good feedback, and they just were very diligent to stick with it and stay with it. It was a huge responsibility to take on. To do the first plan that the city's ever had. So I think they did a great job. So what comes next? If and when you adopt a plan, which would either be tonight or January, your staff will have to figure out how to implement this. That would be the first step. The plan is, yes, there's a future land use map, but there's also a sidewalk and trails map. There's a thoroughfare map that has cross sections in it. So when the idea is you would amend your subdivision standards, so when developers come in, they've got to build roads in accordance with these cross sections. And so you'll get better control over capacity issues with these new subdivisions internally, and then they would have to do mitigation for external impacts on existing roadway systems. So that's in here. And then water supply, there's some ironing out that needs to happen with that. And long-range planning for future capacity. You did a lot for wastewater a few years ago, but nothing's been done with water so far. So that's been identified in here. Parkland, writing a parkland dedication to require new developers to dedicate parkland. I mentioned sidewalks, and then all of the different changes related to the zoning and subdivision codes. So all of those projects are in there, and they're prioritized by short-term, midterm, long-term, and that helps because all of these are budget items for the year. And so when you get your annual budget rolled out for the fiscal year, your city administrator needs some direction on which of these can wait, because it's expensive to run a city. So, excuse me. So this is helpful. Which of these can we punt? Which things need to be done right away? How do we spread these over fiscal years? And where do we look for alternative funding sources? So this implementation section is important for the everyday in workings of your staff, budget items, staffing, all of that kind of stuff. And it's organized by short-term, midterm, long-term, and also a magnitude of cost. Anything that has $1 sign is probably going to be like $25,000 or less. Some of them are like creating a new website for the city and maintaining it. It's things like that. It's pretty like low-hanging fruit. And then the big ticket items are the ones you're going to need partners for, TxDOT, people like that, to get them done. So that kind of helps with that. We also created kind of a top priority list of all those things on the list. We grouped the things that, according to public input, seemed most important. And when I say that, like, the steering committee was really good at honing in on the things like lot size is something that's really important in this community. Sidewalks and safe routes to school, really important in this community. And so knowing that, and parks, more parks, and access to parks, really important. So we kind of created the top list of things that need to be changed based on that feedback that we got. The zoning code, the map doesn't cover all the properties inside the city limits, and the code was written probably a long time ago, because there's no incentive to rewrite it unless you're experiencing growth. So you're experiencing growth, you get to rewrite the zoning code. So it does take a little bit of time to do that. It's a lot of public involvement when you change people's zoning, and so the level, it'd be like doing another one of these, not as extensive, but there will need to be some meetings involved, new categories need to be created, uses need to be assigned, and then a new map needs to be developed. So that would be like a discrete project. Like I said, not as long probably as this, not as heavy duty as this, but it would be another discrete kind of project. Design standards, you're always gonna need to be updating and looking at those, just because industry best practices are always changing for roadways and for drainage and for infrastructure. So just as good practice, you're gonna wanna revisit those every X number of years. But your traffic impact mitigation requirements and proportionality requirements definitely need some attention. Kimberly Horn flagged that in what they were doing. And then because so much of the development is happening outside the city, the strength of your design standards and your subdivision code is what's gonna help you influence how that plays out. And once you get your EDC up and running, that's gonna help. You're gonna, and then some type of putting together of incentive packages and options and things like that, to where staff EDC are equipped to where they can know how to negotiate for which things are bigger priority. Do we have guidelines in place so they know how we want things to look? Those design standards are actually gonna help a lot with that. Your zoning code, of course, would apply within the city limits. The third one on the list, ensure that residents have adequate access to parks and open spaces. If you have an influx of new people like you're about to get, according to that map, it's unfair that existing people who live here have to pay for parks to be built for all of those new people coming in. And so what parkland dedication does is on new residential areas, the developers are required to either dedicate a certain amount of acres or square feet per person or per household, or pay a fee in lieu. And then the city uses that to build intentional parks throughout your city. And so without a parkland dedication ordinance in place, you don't have a way to ask them for that. And you have to come up with a methodology for what you ask. And so you need a separate ordinance for that. And then some place in there, some of those right-of-way sections that were developed need to be codified and need to include a requirement for sidewalks on both sides of the street in new neighborhoods. So there's a lot of recommendations like that in here. Some of this stuff you can do like little things at a time, because they really are budget issues. You know, you find what are your priorities and what can we afford to do this fiscal year, what can we come to next. And some of this stuff, there might be grants for, you can team up with TxDOT, and things like that. Number 4, begin initiatives to improve communication, transparency, and efficiency in matters of city governance. You're already well on your way to that. Like, I was just telling you, I'm so happy to see, like, the agenda looked amazing. You guys are like, we're doing the pledge, like, it's great. The EDC, you're already talking about that. There's been rumblings again about P&Z, so this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes commitment. But I wanted to get the EDC and P&Z in here so that everything's moving in the same way. So, because people were asking about certain things, and so then I think I brought it up about 6 months ago at a council meeting about an EDC, and well, people in Puffinfish, you said, well, we have one. I was like, that's great. So, getting that up and running, establishing a planning and zoning commission, getting a new city website and maintaining it, these are going to help a lot to maintain environmental transparency, improve communication, and also efficiency. Number 5, improve pedestrian spaces in Godly. As I mentioned, new sidewalks. And one of the biggest issues that came up in our meetings was safe routes to school. A lot of kids ride their bikes or walk to school. And so as new sidewalks are being built, the idea is to focus those on connections to the school where they're needed the most and build out from that. So you start with where sidewalks connect to schools and then build the network out from that. We just team up with TxDOT whenever it is anywhere close to a TxDOT right away. I think there's already a trail that you guys have flagged for that anyways right now. but build off of what your starting points are, piggyback on projects with other organizations whenever you can for funding, and slowly build that network over the city. And requiring your developers to build that helps you too. So you kind of are doing sidewalks in 3 different ways. You're finding partners, you're building improvements around schools, maybe teaming up with the school district, and then requiring developers to build them in the neighborhoods. So that's how you kind of slowly build your sidewalk network over time. And then number 6, ensure adequate water and wastewater capacity for Gadley's future population. That's not the like brightest and shiniest like thing on the tree, but it's probably the most important. You know, there are certain basic functions of governance as a city you have to do. Police power and water and wastewater are kind of at the top of that list. And so you always want to keep your eye on that. It's difficult to do utility master plan in the absence of a land use plan. When the wastewater plan was done a couple of years ago, the consultant doing it, that's kind of how I ended up in this, now I'm thinking about it. He called me and asked, he's like, how do I do wastewater plan for the city of Gadley when they don't have a land use plan? I was like, I don't know, that's crazy. So you need some type of land use plan in place so that you can do water and wastewater master planning, because they have to make assumptions based on land use. So if you have no land use in place, it's difficult to do water and wastewater planning. We already talked about this. Do you guys, we can go through some other detailed stuff, but it needs a big thing. So would you guys rather ask me some questions now? I want to give the rest of the time to you guys to kind of tell me what you want to talk about.
So I haven't had a chance to review all of it yet, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So on page 98, the core residential sector, why is it only the west side of town where the east side of town, which is also residential, is labeled as a city core?
Very good question. So it's because originally we had talked about that whole area of being one land use district. The problem with that is there's a strong dominance of residential west of Main Street. East of Main Street, a lot of that land is either floodplain or undeveloped. And somebody off the cuff, in one of our first steering committee meetings, I said something about downtown, and they're like, do we really have a downtown? Like, being honest, is there really a downtown here? Which I thought was, first of all, really, it was a funny statement, but there's like the start of one, but there's not really, you don't have blocks, you know, where people walk around multiple blocks. And so the only place to really have that would be in this core area. And the reason that's really, there's 2 reasons that's really, really important. First of all is, if you just kind of laissez-faire, let whatever happens, happens, it's gonna naturally, you're gonna naturally see 171 strip out with commercial retail stuff, because it's east highway out, it's all just should be that, and then it's gonna just keep going in each direction off of 171. You need stuff on the other side of the tracks because all the traffic is coming from the north. And so, I talked earlier about that bottleneck condition. If you'll allow your commercial to cross those tracks and invest in actually creating a center to your city, it's gonna help with more efficient traffic management, and it's also gonna create a there. And so instead of you guys just being, you know, a few intersections along 171, there's a town center that everything can kind of orient around. Earlier on too, somebody mentioned how they thought Granbury was such a great example to look at on the city, like, you know, if you could say, who do we want to be when we grow up, that's a great place to go. We enjoy the downtown. Well, if you think about how the square is down there, you don't want to drive. You don't be driving around that square at all, but it's a great place to go, get out, you park and go walk around. It's beautiful. You know, they invest a lot of money in their public spaces, and it's the public section of it, the walking experience of it is desirable. Even in the shops along the lake there, they've invested a little bit in storefronts, you know, and things like that. So, so that's kind of the focus of the pink, is to actually create a center for the city, which is an economic benefit and a placemaking benefit to create more of a culture of Godly, and to relieve some of the pressure on those intersections at 171, so that all commercial, you don't have to go sit in traffic, you know, to get to every, you want to go to a coffee shop, you can go downtown. If you want to go to a restaurant, or you want to go to anything else, you know, you can go downtown to get some of this stuff. So that's the point of that. But the turquoise area that you mentioned, that's already predominant, that's mostly built out already, and it's mostly residential. And so I just felt And there's such a concern about protecting like the residential pattern here and not letting it change a lot. And so that was, I was like, yeah, that's true. And so if we want to do that, this does that. This says no, all that stuff I just talked about for the pink, that doesn't apply here. And so it just contains that type of center to something a little more achievable. This is a little more, oh, sorry, wrong way. This is a little more realistic and a little more achievable. So you're not talking about like completely changing the flavor of Godly at all. You're saying, we need a city center, we need to relieve pressure on those intersections. The pink area would be another thing. Another reason this is great, I'm so excited about this and I really hope it works out someday, is because, 917, tollway, road access, well, everybody has to go through your downtown. If they're coming on 171 or coming up 2331 from the south, everybody funnels into downtown to go out to Chisholm Trail. Hadley it's kind of a hot mess right now. It needs a lot of improvement. But switching your 917 access from Main Street to Hadley would completely change and relieve a lot of the traffic burdens there. And that's the type of project then you could then shop to TxDOT for a long-range project. You could even come down lower on the thoroughfare plan later on the thoroughfare section. It shows 2331 in the future. It could even go further east before it hooks north. And you could get a 2331 Hadley direct connection there. It would require some grading improvements and some road realignments, and it would be a TxDOT project. But that's the type of stuff you want to get into this, because then you have something you can shop to them, and you're influencing the future movement of traffic in your town instead of just reacting to whatever they design and they build. So Hadley as an alternate route to 917 also helps to relieve traffic downtown. So that's another reason that this pink was kind of created where it was. That's a good question though. There is a lot in here. I'll agree with you, there's just a lot. So I could talk about this all night, well, not really now, but normally. So I'm fine answering questions as long as you guys want to ask them.
Any way of developing a loop around so we can connect the farm roads to 171 north of, east of town, west of town?
We
Did
explored that.
be discussed with TxDOT?
We
Were
did.
they adding that?
I don't think I have a map of that in here. Maybe, let me see. Yeah. And I've got my little laser pointer, so I know how to use it. Okay, will it work on here? Yes. So there's two ways to explore doing that. And the reason, see here is what I was talking about.
Mhm.
This is where we ended because of what you brought up, because here's the challenge. South, geographically, as far as constraints go, if you just said to TxDOT, we want a bypass, they would put it to the south. That would be terrible for you guys, because if you say you want small town feel and you don't want to become Keller and you don't want, 50,000 people moving out here tomorrow, you don't want to build access to this good, flat, desirable, easy to build on land, because then all the development will follow that.
Okay.
And so to me, that's a viable alternative from a traffic planning standpoint, but for your community, which is trying to promote small town, that doesn't help promote small town. So that one's off the table. So we said nope to that. This is a great idea. Some people mentioned this as a connection up here. I think that'd be great someday. Excuse me. But your real challenge is how to get from 2331 north over to 917, because Lynx is so pressured right now for that. It's going to become worse and worse over time. We put a dash line in here. Earlier on, we talked about some type of connection through the floodplain, but the mud is right, there's a mud right there that's kind of already been approved. And so there's just some limitations on where a connection like that could go. So we dropped a dashed line in and said proposed arterial, that somewhere in this area, proposed arterial probably needs to go in the future. But again, to avoid this whole, let's not make it so easy for everyone that everybody moves here. We didn't build a lot of direct connection bypasses because that stimulates growth.
Okay.
And that stimulates development. So we showed connections that would improve connectivity and alleviate some of the pressures for local people without creating additional regional scale roadways.
Ah, good,
Because
okay.
that makes things grow more. So, but that's a really good, I love all this stuff. So, but in the thoroughfare section, if you look really close, that's what I tend to gloss over these because I'm just like, oh, they're just lines on the map, but they're really not. It says a lot. So showing here that there needs to be greater connectivity here, so, and you can ask, that's another thing, you can ask developers, if they come in to do things, then all of a sudden, well, what are you doing to relieve congestion and improve connectivity between these two roads? And then they'll say, well, shoot, we gotta do that. And then they have to go look at that, so because it's now on your map. There's some other, improvements that are suggested in here as well. So on that thoroughfare section, anything that's a dashed line is proposed, and anything that's a solid line is existing. And then like I said before, there's all these different roadway classifications that have been identified. Another thing that people talked about a lot was that even though there's not this big booming, huge multi-block downtown, there still is like parking concern and traffic concern. And so we talked about how you can manage that long-term, either through like using unbuilt land as a temporary parking area with some more economical surfacing materials that the city could, if you have an EDC, the city could manage a parking area, a parking lot downtown, doing parallel instead of angled parking to add more sidewalks, but adding on-street parking in other streets, not just right there on that one block of Main Street, but as things, like new projects that get built around this area, requiring them to put parking in or sidewalks in and things like that to help your downtown grow in a way that helps everybody and is a more enjoyable place to be. That's a good question. Anything else?
So just so y'all are all aware, and Roger, to answer your question, the commissioners and the county judge will start their roadway planning next month. We will be invited to that plan, or I guess you and the mayor will be. They should be getting a hold of y'all soon. TxDOT is also going to be a part of that. They are actually looking at a loop to go around Godley.
To the north?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll go all the way from 1187 all the way to south of Godley.
Like this?
Basically like what Crescent's getting to completely bypass the town.
Well, and we can't, and that's the other, 950, this whole area up here is great, but the challenge is your ETJ stops right here. And so that's great that you brought that up, and this is a perfect example. So when you attend that meeting, you lay this down, say, this is what we want. So then when they do their alignment studies, they kind of know, and you say things like, we're promoting small town feel, we don't want to stimulate unnecessary growth, or whatever, however you want to say that, but you can say, we want a system that works with we've already adopted this. So then they have to kind of dialogue with you, and you're at the table, part of that conversation. So, because sometimes they come up with wacky things, and you don't want, but if you don't have anything else to offer, then you're just there saying no to it.
County and TxDOT district are well aware that this is about to be approved, or it's working on being approved, so.
But wouldn't a bypass bring commercial, industrial things that we need to support our tax dollars? So we're saying that we don't want to be a bedroom community?
Yeah. You got to this.
Yeah, take your time.
I think I heard it back here from somebody very smart. The challenge is that your city limits, let me find a good city limit map. Is it on this? Yeah. There's really no place that bypass would give you any benefit, because you only collect sales tax within your city limits. So that's actually the reason you wouldn't want one. And so all of those businesses that would move outside of the city do nothing but burden you with degraded streets, and you don't get a commercial benefit from that. That's why we created the commercial district where we did. It's not that commercial can't go anywhere else. It's just this is the only real stretch of property in your city limit that has access to highway-oriented traffic. And even when 2331 expands, there's so much subdivision going in up here, it's never gonna be like a commercial area. And so you need to make the most out of all of this. You have a limited window right now of exposure for highway. And if they put a bypass in and it goes up here, that does nothing for you from a sales tax perspective. So that's one of the reasons you kind of don't want the bypass. Most cities that get bypassed, their downtowns just die. Like, it's really hard to maintain a vibrant downtown when bypasses go in. And you need you need it more than anybody, because you don't have a super big one right now. So you need to be all in on pink for specialty commercial, for the local community, like local commercial, and then all in on red for highway-oriented, traffic-oriented commercial, from a sales tax perspective.
A lot of us were not here when you guys were hired, so what is Mosaic's responsibility once a plan is adopted?
It depends on you. So if you adopt the plan moving forward, normally we come in later and help do the zoning code, just because it's more cost-effective and efficient, because we do the land use plan, so it's an easy pivot for us. Normally we work with city attorney, and they do procedural changes that are needed. And we do design-oriented plans that are needed, but it's completely up to you guys. We can help with an orientation for staff, but the end of this contract is this point. So this is under this contract where we end at adoption point. I can come back next month, if we, however long until we get across the finish line. But once the plan is adopted, this contract ends. But it's normal for us to get brought back either for some type of consulting review on projects for a while. We create forms for some people, like for Kendall County, we created all of their new application forms that they needed to do all of this stuff. Or we could do design review, or we do zoning codes. A lot of times we come in to do the Unified Development Code, or the set of all design standards and zoning that's needed for a community after they do this. But you would normally, for the big projects, you'll go back out through bid and all of that stuff. So that's probably the only question, but this contract ends whenever you guys take action on the thing, and then we're here for anything you need after that.
I see, I think 3 members of the steering committee. How many members are here actually right now from the steering committee?
Yes.
Are you guys all in agreement that happy with the plan that has been presented from your work? Hate to put you on the spot, but
I still have concerns. I know what Julie said earlier today, but I've asked that question to both Chris and Eli, and never really got a straight answer of that it's just a guide, and we can do whatever you guys want without any legal ramifications. They both told me there could be legal ramifications, and that's why I'm like, how binding is this plan? That was my contention all along. I asked that question probably every meeting, and I still don't have a clear answer. I know what Dean said.
Yeah, I can read the statute were you pointing to me?
No, I was just
Okay.
saying that Julie spoke to you about it. I've asked Chris and Eli about it.
Yeah.
and I don't think I ever got a real clear answer, and I kind of presented that the last time I spoke to you guys. And so that's my concern is if it's just a guide, I think that's okay. But if there is some bindingness to it, I have concerns.
Yeah, so I'll read from the statute. I think this might help a little bit. So the purpose of adopting a comprehensive plan, and this is a very short chapter in Texas law. It's chapter 213 of the local government code. It says the powers granted under this chapter are for the purpose of promoting sound development of municipalities and promoting public health, safety, and welfare. And I'm just going to kind of scroll down here to the bottom because it gets back into the effect. Okay, effect on other municipal plans. This chapter does not limit the ability of municipality to prepare other plans, policies, or strategies as required. Okay, and then you'll notice in the plan, there's a short sentence, and the sentence is required by law, and it says, a comprehensive plan shall not constitute zoning regulations or establish zoning district boundaries. Okay, so that is language that's required by law. And I think that's designed to help answer some of those questions, because it's hard to understand, like, what does this plan really do, right? So we have this little tiny chapter of Texas law that asks you to adopt a plan, but then it also says a comprehensive plan shall not constitute zoning regulations or establish zoning district boundaries. Okay,
Can I ask you a quick question there? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But since that is worded that way, then we can have a comprehensive plan, but if we don't have the zoning in place, it means nothing.
You need your zoning in
The
place.
zoning is
Yes.
what is the regulatory
That's right.
authority, not the comprehensive plan.
That's right. Comprehensive plan is the purpose is to guide. I mean, it doesn't say specifically guide, but It's helpful. Purpose of promoting sound development in municipalities and promoting public health, safety, and welfare.
And also, I would add, and it is, I love planning in Texas because a lot of other states are super prescriptive on what you have to do in all of your comprehensive plans. Texas just like, just do one if you want, you know. But in 212, in your subdivision code, part of your the enabling language for you is to create systems for utilities and infrastructure based on the master plan of the city. And that's a very vague reference. And so I just see the comprehensive plan as your cover because of that. So when you go forward and you do new infrastructure planning, or you deny or say yes or no to a project based on infrastructure capacity and things like that, you get to point back to this as the reference for your decisions based on infrastructure planning through 212. And it also, it's just better cover. You don't have to follow it, but if you get to point to it and it provides cover. So discretionary authority is granted to you by the state of Texas to decide zoning matters. You know, it just is. That's an enabling power given to you. But if you don't have, back to what I said earlier, if you don't have a guidebook, then how do you know? You're kind of making decisions just based on what you like and don't like. And that's a high level exposure for you as a council when you get really contentious, problematic projects coming forward. And so I see this as your cover in a lot of ways. It's a guidebook, definitely, as I mentioned earlier, but it's also a cover when you're having to make some of those decisions and you need to know whether they're good decisions or bad decisions. It's kind of nice to have something to kind of look at as a reference.
If I understand what you're saying this gives us, in fact, a little additional power over developers and what they want to do, because
Huge. A
Yeah.
lot.
if we don't have a plan, pretty much they get to do whatever they like, but if we do have one, then we have more
Yeah,
authority to say
right.
no.
You point to the plan and you say, this is what we'd like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then when I asked the questions in the meeting about if this is land use for multifamily and the council decides not to approve multifamily there, you said that there could be legal ramifications for that, correct? You and Eli both told me that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
I didn't say it exactly like that. I'm saying that if the city adopts a plan and then they throw it out and never use it, there comes a point where if you're not using it, then you're back without cover. That's what I meant by that, is that if you're sticking to the plan, but if every decision you guys make moving forward has nothing to do with this, and you get challenged on something, then you're back where you are now without the cover. And so it's not like you're adding liability, you're just taking your cover away by not following it.
My concern that I voiced throughout the whole process was that the amount of multifamily and small lot developments that are possible in the plan, the way that it's written, and some things that Carissa had said, Eli had said, that let's just say several developers come in with multifamily projects, or let's say tiny lot developments, and they're all within the area where we say it could be appropriate. If y'all cannot deny those because it says it would be appropriate here, and we end up with nothing but multifamily and nothing but tiny lot developments, well then there goes the small town that the community wants so much to keep. And so,
But I
the
don't think they would
legality
ever
of
do that
that.
to y'all. They would never do that to y'all.
But if you're saying they have legal ramifications if they
No.
don't allow it,
Nowhere in
because
here
it
does
says
it
it's
say they have to
appropriate.
do any of that. It never says in here you have to approve multifamily. It just says, and I did make that change, because I know that's been a concern, and Kayla's been really good about making sure that we watch those lot sizes. And that's why, if you remember at that last meeting, I said, we should even change from allowed to appropriate. And so I went in right away and caught that myself. And so if you'll notice in that land use sectors thing, I'm so glad you brought that up. So just to make it very clear, because the word allowed is really problematic, because the assumption there is it's going to be approved because it says allowed. And that wasn't the intention, and so I stepped in and changed that to make sure that what she's saying is clear. So nowhere in here does it say the word shall. Nowhere in here does it say required. The language is preferred, appropriate, and then some of the uses, this is hard because you guys I don't think y'all use special use permits here, do you? They don't use SUPs, do they? Do you know? Do you know?
No.
Yeah. So some cities use certain special zoning tools to approve special projects that should never be blanks allowed anywhere. You guys don't have those tools yet, and so I was trying to build language into this so that when you redo your zoning code, you can build those in yourself. And so, use as possible as special projects, that's what that section down there is for. But just because something says appropriate, I think you said it earlier, it just means if it comes to you and it says appropriate, but you're like, yeah, but this whole area, we already have too much. So it might be okay for this area, but we already have too much of this, we're gonna let it go, because that's your right to do that. So there's a context table, there's all kinds of little things in here to protect y'all. Then we put this matrix at the back, you know, that says, okay, well, just because it's appropriate, if it's not next to something that is good, then it's not appropriate. It might be appropriate in this big area, but it's not appropriate for that lot, so no. So you have a right to say no based on the matrix. And then this balance of uses here gives you a rough guide. Dennis asked, we really did incorporate most of the feedback. If there was a way to address it, we tried to incorporate it the best way we could. Because earlier, when you expressed concern about like thresholds and how much of capacity of each thing, the problem is that land use, as Dean said, it can't be pre-zoning. You can't go in and pre-zone parcels, you know, and divide up undeveloped property and tell everybody all that stuff. So it's very difficult in Godly, where so much of the land in this area is undeveloped so far. It's very hard to go in and do the same type of math that you would be doing for, say, the city of Fort Worth, where every parcel, everything's subdivided already. And so they can create some threshold numbers. So what we did that was more realistic is created for each of these areas a rough guide for the balance of uses among the general categories. So the makeup of residential versus commercial versus civic versus industrial. And so it shows that all, like in this area, all of those could probably be accommodated, but it would depend on the lot. It would depend on what the project was and whether it was going to be too burdensome on your infrastructure system. So going back to, you always have the right to deny or the right to approve. This tries to give you cover for your decisions. And then these blue boxes over here, I'd asked for some input on these, but I don't think I ever got it. Different priorities for how to manage growth and improve livability in these areas. And so this land, y'all have like 5 tools in here to give you cover for making your decisions. And so the decision is always going to end on you. If you reject this and step away from it, you step out from under the cover, and then you just go back to where you are now. But if you follow this, then you're under the cover, and you have all of these different things in here that can help you make the harder decisions. Some things are cut and dry, like, you know, there's some decisions that are just easy. Like, if they want to do an infill project with 5 new homes that are spectacular in a residential area, that's probably going to be perfectly fine if they follow all the rules. But then other things are really hard to decide, like, is a gas station good for this location? Well, I don't know, you know, so you got to go in and look. So this gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of cover when you're deciding zoning decisions. So, and that's going to be the primary use of the land use plan for you guys in your like day-to-day life operations. Is going to be rezonings and zoning decisions. And then staff will be using this and all the other sections, when, like I said, when they're setting out the improvement projects, staffing requirements, just how to manage their budget year, all of that kind of stuff. They'll be using this as more of in a different way. And I'm imagining how this was intended to play out was here. Staff would have some type of form, and staff would go through this process, and they'd have a form and fill it out, and in your packet that you get each Friday for the following council meeting, you would get an analysis of a zoning application. And so you don't have to do all that stuff I was showing you. Staff does that for you, fills this out, gives it to you, gives you their summary, and so you have that provided to you. That's kind of how I see this playing out. Forms are good. Forms help a lot. Big fan of forms. Did you guys have any other questions? I didn't mean to jump in and tell you I didn't know.
No, I mean, my only thought is that we're clear on that it's just a guideline.
Yeah.
You guys have, full rights to say what you think is the best for the city. I'm okay with the plan. I really feel we need a plan. I just didn't want to find ourselves into something where we had,
The severability clause. I'm going to let Dean talk about that. Every time you adopt something like this, it's usually, not always, but it's generally adopted by ordinance. And there are standard terms that are included in that cover ordinance. And they're like the legal term, like a contract terms.
Okay.
And severability is always included in any contract term that you're ever gonna have. And so,
Yeah, so severability clause is a general term we usually include in the ordinance. The way it works, and maybe hopefully this answers this question, but the way it works is, let's say you were to challenge the comprehensive plan, or challenge a zoning ordinance, or any ordinance that you have. The severability language allows us to tell the judge, extract only that thing being challenged, but not the entire ordinance. And so what it does is it reserves the rest of the plan. So let's say you had a provision in here that said absolutely no multifamily anywhere in the entire city. Okay, that would probably violate federal law. And someone could challenge that, and we would say, Judge, okay, take out that sentence, don't touch the rest of the plan. That's how severability clause works.
So you just sever that which is
Yeah.
unlawful
Right, that's right. Sever that which
by
is.
itself.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. And that way you don't have kind of like a
So the whole thing
collapse
doesn't get
of-
tossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that would be in cases where it was a matter of legal determination against the city. So it's not
Right.
something you would have to worry about in your everyday operations. Just if you had a legal challenge, you're getting sued over something or something.
Yeah,
like
you'd
that.
need a judge to say this is unlawful, take it out.
I saw a map that showed the city sewer system, but outside the city in the ETJ, with people tying on to our sewer, we can control them whether they're in the ETJ or not, if they wanna tie on to our sewer line. They can still, we can make them follow these rules.
Okay, so let me
Do
tell
you-
you why I love that you asked that question. If they're tying into your system, then yes. I always encourage cities in their subdivision ordinance to write standards for their utilities if especially there are other service providers in an area that you regulate in some way, you want to be able to control their stuff. And so that's the reason why water and wastewater standards, it's not just about where our service area is, but it's about standards within that area or any other area where we control anything. We want to be able to have some rules over how that goes. So yes, if they tie into your system, you get to tell them. Yeah. Are you saying the map doesn't show?
Well, I remember showing, no, I don't think it showed in the ETJ, but we also serve a lot of the community, all the
I'm gonna make a note about that,
subdivisions in
okay.
town and out in the
So
rest.
we need to do a map check to make sure that our, because we, 5960, okay. That our wastewater service map is correct. And in our, that's
Don't we
kind of
do
why,
other sides besides this?
and I don't know how, the other problem, we had a big problem with data. That was one of our challenges because there weren't a lot of up-to-date current maps for us to pull from for base maps for the project. So it could be that those maps the city needs to update its maps, for that stuff. And so I'll have Kimberly Horn go back and look at the data they have, ask them where they got it. And it might be something where our maps need to be updated to more accurately reflect where the city is actually servicing. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Am I not mistaken that some of the subdivisions outside of town tie to pump stations, lift stations, or whatever, tie into our sewer system?
Yes, so Hadley Farms will have has a pump station. Trinin's development will have a pump station, which is on 171. But it doesn't.
Now, the other thing, just to let y'all know, is that wastewater wasn't a component of the plan, just water. So I tried my best to just put recommendations in there for you guys on, because y'all just did that wastewater master plan a couple of years ago. And I didn't want to redo, I'm just a big respecter of budget, so I didn't want to say, go do a whole new plan when you just did one. So we weren't scoped to do an actual wastewater plan because you already have that other one. But at the same time, our data needs to be accurate. So I'll go back and just check with them on the data they received and just make sure. And if there's any gaps in there, I'll probably, we'll have them do a bingo, maybe,
Okay.
or something like that.
Will you have them reach out to Kevin, the Public Works Director, because we're about to get a new
Yes.
main line going down 171 for wastewater.
Do y'all have staff contact on the website, or should I just call? Should I call and get it?
I'll email it to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, yeah, I'll have them talk to each other, because like I said, it's challenging. We called it water and wastewater, and we gave some general recommendations in there, but we were only scoped to do water. They just wanted to do a little bit extra. So that's kind of where we ended on that. Good question, though. Do you guys feel like you need some more time with this document before you make a decision, or what do you want to do from here?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know that I necessarily need more time. Quite frankly, I'm actually kind of disappointed in this. I've been hearing about a comprehensive plan for a while, but all of these recommendations that I see in here, these are things that we've all already identified as needing to be done. And it's really, it doesn't give us like really any sort of actual plan. This is really not a plan. It's kind of irresponsible to call it a plan. It's an outline with some recommendations on it, but it's really not a plan. So I'm a little disappointed in this, and I just feel like it's gonna be more burdensome on the staff. But at some point, we do need some sort of map that helps them guide the zoning. I would have rather have seen new zoning ordinances than some of the stuff that's in here, frankly.
Do you, I'm sure you know the difference, but there's a difference between your comprehensive plan and your capital improvements plan.
Yes.
And so normally you need a general high-level comprehensive plan like this before you can do any of those things. You need this as a first step. Your capital improvements plan would always follow this, and then your zoning code work would follow this as well. And so it's difficult to do those individual things in the absence of an overarching list of project goals, and without a vision, and without a future land use plan. And so the purpose of this project was to provide that general umbrella so that you guys could come in later and do a capital improvements plan and do a new zoning code and all of those other things in there that are recommended. It takes a long time to develop all those items, and they're very expensive. And so the city has to figure out how we prioritize all of those, and then what we need to go about doing first, second, third, and all of that. So this is a first step to go, and all those items you mentioned would come later. And you didn't have a lot of the things in there. You didn't have a land use map, and you didn't have a thoroughfare plan, and you didn't have a sidewalk plan. And the recommendations grew out of specific locations where those are needed. So there's linear foot listed for all those improvements that are needed that you didn't have before. And so there are things in there that you didn't have before. The list is not extensive because it would be overwhelming. There's no way you could do more than what's on that page in the next, say, 10 years. And those project lists aren't supposed to be 20 years worth, because we can come back to those every 5 or 10 years and update them. But there are just city budget constraints, and so that's the realistic list of what you need to focus on for now. Once you get down the road on these and get those things put in place, then you can come back and update that project list. That's typically how these are done. You update that project list as you grow and get things checked off the list. But it's a little bit unrealistic to give you 100 things when you've got 5 maybe people working here. You don't have a development services department, you don't have an engineering department, you have one person for all these things, and so you don't have the staff to execute a lot of things. And so we created an implementation list that's effective and that's suited for your staffing capabilities and your capabilities. Once you get a P&Z in place, once you build departments, once you build staff, once you get revenue streams coming in through increased sales tax, once you create your EDC, you'll be able to go back in and do some of these other things. But this is the starting point, calling out some of that.
I understand what you're saying. I get that this is a starting point. I get that we didn't have a lot of the things that we should not have had. I understand that. But to me, this is not a plan. So to call it over and over again a plan, it's not a plan. It's a guideline, and
Okay.
hopefully we can go in the future from that, but it's not a plan.
Okay.
You sit down for a minute?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
Do you need to sit down for a minute?
I'm okay.
So what would it take, and this may be for our engineering firm, to get a accurate zoning map, because looking at page 53, and I know
Yeah, I
we've
know.
already discussed this, it's from 2007. A majority of it's wrong. So it's hard for me to
Yeah.
adopt something whenever I know there's maps that are wrong.
So the challenge with zoning is, and we talked about this a little earlier, the map is, okay, when you build anything, you know, the thing that takes the longest time to do is the grading and the foundation work, but nobody cares about that at all. And then once that gets done, everything else goes up really fast. It's the same with zoning. So you can't, the map is what you need, but you can't get the map until you have categories that align with this. And then you've got to do your master use table, you've got to do dimensions and all of these other things. So you've got to kind of rebuild your zoning code before you can do your map. Because the map, people care about that, how their properties are zoned, so you have to do a lot of public involvement. People want to come, so it becomes an extensive process, and then you are zoning someone's property. And so if you do all of that just to get to a map, and then you turn around, well, now we need to redo our zoning code, then you have to go through that all over again, and every single time you change that, you're creating opportunity for legal challenge. And so you don't want to do your map until you've redone your zoning code. And so, but you can't do your zoning code until you have land use. And so it's a tricky thing you have to go through. So you got to get the land use done, then you got to go and you got to redo your zoning code. And there's different things that can go in there, and it just depends on your priorities and how fast and what you think it needs to have. And then once you have all of those components written, then you can do your map. The map itself is fairly simple to do because it's not a big city. There aren't a lot of parcels. And it would have to be probably a new map. There's different ways you can do it. And normally you would have a design firm or some type of designer working with your city attorney, and they oversee procedure and how it's going to get done and all of that kind of stuff. And then you would write in designy stuff for the other stuff. So that's a normal process. And some places it can take forever to get a zoning one done, others not so long. It really depends on the level of concern and desire for involvement that your community has. Because this is policy language, that is law, and when you change a zoning code, you're changing the entitlements and rights of use for someone's property, and people really care about that. So you've got to have a really transparent process, you've got to have a lot of involvement, and you've got to work back and forth on that for quite a while. So it takes some time to get the ordinance written, but then it really takes some time to work the map through with everybody. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but, and the trick is you kind of got to do it kind of fast because like you said, that it's really outdated. And so, so it's just a matter of time management, budget management, and I set this up to help with that as much as I could. Like the fact that I already gave you your housing types. So when the zoning categories are created, you already have those definitions there, you already have images there, graphics there. And ties between zoning and land use. So when you develop those categories, this is the springboard for that. You know, you still have to hash out lot widths, heights, you want to do density versus dimensions, all that kind of stuff, your master use table, the nuts and bolts, how making yourself make the sausage. But this kind of gets you going in a good direction. And then we couldn't do, normally, like if you most cities have like a semi-okay zoning code to where they just need to do some tweaks later, but y'all are we're gonna have to be starting from ground zero, so I couldn't really do a zoning land use comparison in here because there's no zoning to work off of it. So when you do your zoning code, there's a high likelihood that would be another point of amendment for this, because you'd go back in there and replace this right here with like zoning allocations. So you'd go back in and do an update to this. When you do that zoning code, drop in those pages in. That's a pretty quick exercise. But that's a very good question.
Adopting this plan isn't adopting this zoning code.
No. That's, the problem is,
It's just what you had to work with.
yes, that's your current zoning of the city, is that. Like today, that's the zoning of the city. Anybody else have any? So back to that question. So Misty, you indicated you'd like more time with it. So as I mentioned earlier, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is if you see anything that you want changed, provide the list of changes, we make those changes. Once you're satisfied with that, you're done with the comprehensive plan. You know, we get everything, it's never gonna be perfect, you're always gonna have things, you know, you talked about a map change that needs to be, I already pointed out another thing that's probably gonna change, you know, in 6 months or a year anyway. So you can come back in 2 or 3 weeks and do another, you know, so that it's just, there's gonna be little fiddles along the way. This is your starting point from ground zero, as I mentioned. The thing that probably shouldn't change, I would recommend not changing, is this kind of stuff. This high level, like, come on, get back up. Like the vision statement for the city, you know, things that grew out of direct public involvement where people gave inputs. If you go in and change those, I would always recommend anything that came out of public input, don't change it without public input. And so, like if y'all decide in a month, we hate that, we want to change it, I would suggest doing a Facebook thing or, you know, something on your website, you know, contest for new goal, you know, just some level of public. Anytime you're going to change anything in the plan that grew out of public input, get public input before you make the change. Like the goals list, where that ended up here. Like these goals for growth, that grew out of a lot of input and thought and time and all 3 levels. It started with the surveys, then we tested these on the community forum, and then we tested them with the steering committee. And so a lot of thought was put into these at different groups, different sections of community. So if you're gonna change these, that's totally in your purview, but I would just recommend, if you're changing something that grew out of public input, get new input before you make those changes. Just out of respect for all the people that gave that.
I have a quick billing question. So in November, Mosaic, you billed us 18,875, and then October was 18,035. The longer we go, is that part of I don't know the contract, so.
So we're on, we're on a percent completion budget, so there's a fixed fee, and then we bill based on hours of work each month. And so you bill, let's say, if you get a bill on November 1st, it's probably for work in October, or whatever. And so each month you get billed for work in that month, and then there's a fixed fee, and as I say, it's based on the tasks that are assigned to us and percent completion. And so it all gets filled out in the budget, and there's nothing added on past that.
Okay, so if we go past, you know, tonight or whatever, it's not another 18,000 in January, just because.
No, yeah, no, it's not like that. So the way we normally handle it, just so you know, I already told Angie, I'll drive up and do, we were supposed to be done tonight, but it's important to me that we get it done right, not just off. So, I think probably another meeting would be good, so I'm fine with that. I'm glad, I totally forgot to ask you this. So one of the challenges I need some guidance on is, we have subscription services for the project though that are set to expire in like a week or 2. So that we'll get into ad service land. The longer the project goes, if I have to, like the project website, if I have to keep that running, I gotta buy another year of that. You know, so things like that. So I need you guys to tell me, no, we're done with that, close that down, we're just at adoption now, so we don't need any more of that. Or, no, we wanna do this for 6 more months, you know, so I kinda need some guidance now. Are we just talking about council tweaks, or are we saying we want the project to keep going longer? Because then I'll probably have to, and it's not fixed, it's not like a fixed amount each month, it's based on work that we do, so I'd probably, but if I need to do 5 more meetings, I gotta, that's not covered.
Sure, I get you. What's your hourly rate?
180, so, yeah, and with Eli is 190, no, I'm sorry, he's 90 or 100, it's not 100. So, usually what I do is on a task, like if we have to add on extra meetings, I just do a meeting budget. And that's it, so I'm easy on all that stuff, it's not, yeah.
Well, one of the things I did notice, repetition of error in here is on all your figures referencing graphs or pictures. There's a lot of them that are not referring to the correct thing.
Okay, thanks.
So that's what I'm saying. I was out of town on the last meeting you guys had, so
Okay.
I'm just getting to review.
Okay.
And that's where I've got so far, but there is a lot of
Okay, we'll check on that. Thank you.
errors on that.
And can we, if we can set, I was thinking, just because I know it's the holidays, so would it be reasonable maybe if you guys could get comments into Angie by maybe the next council meeting, and that would give me some time to work on answering them. Cause I, cause once you give them to me, I gotta work on them to get the final ready to bring to you the next time. And,
January the 2nd.
so then cause then I could come back to the 16th, or whatever date in between, just so that maybe, I was thinking if I come on the 16th, that would give y'all, so you're not working over Christmas, you know? Or, y'all are working over Christmas, so,
I may not be here on the second, sorry.
yeah, but just get them to her, like email them her comments by a certain day, 'cause I just need at least a week with them. So if I could get them maybe by the 5th, which I think that's a Friday, right?
Yeah, it's a Friday.
Yeah,
Okay,
Friday.
by January 5th, and then I can, I'll just make responses back and everything like that. Would that, is that reasonable? Would that work for everybody?
So you need to, if we're gonna tweak this, or if we wanna rework a whole lot of it, which I don't think we do, I don't wanna rework a bunch of it. So I don't want you to extend any of your license
Right.
fees, I don't wanna bear the cost of that, but I don't mind spending some time getting some questions and then answered.
Yeah, we'll just need one round, because this would be kind of I don't think it's an extra round, because I've been asking for feedback for so long, and I'm always appreciative of it when I get it, so, so it's not an extra, but, probably we built in for one round, so if we could maybe set a date, get all of them, and then if I could just get them all at the same time and work, because if I make all these changes, then 5 days later, a different set comes in, it's hard for me to. So if everybody can have like a deadline for getting comments in, and then I get them on the 5th, then that gives me a week to work with them. Because if I have questions, I need time to be able to write back, and ask for clarification, stuff like that.
So
Is that
this was
reasonable?
supposed to be the last month of the contract?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Today is supposed to be the end, like December 31st was supposed to be the end, but I'll check effective date though, that's a good question, I don't know if I set it for that.
So we'll owe you 18 next time you bill us? No.
Just on the work that we've done. We don't bill like the same rate every month. It just so happened those 2 months look similar.
Oh, okay.
Some months it's like 6, and some months it's like 2, some months it's like 18. So it just depends on how much work,
How much is left on the contract? What do we owe you, do you know?
not much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're at probably 90%, if not more. But we're at the end, because it's supposed to end this month. So none of this that we're talking about would trigger any type of ad service or any additional fees. So this is all part of the contract.
I'd like to know when that is triggered, if it does trigger. May not.
Okay, an expiration date, okay. And if it does, if it's set to, tell me how we would do this. So if, let's say this contract was supposed to run through December 31st, would I just need to send a modification form to the city to extend it to like, let's say, March?
Yeah, just need to extend the contract.
Yeah, so that's not a big deal.
And at that point, the hourly rate starts?
Well, then what's the additional cost for extending?
Yeah.
No, it's just saying, that's just a modification to the original contract. So we're not triggering anything extra here. This is just us getting to a final document, and we're doing one round of council review, which is built in anyways. And then anything past that, being that final that y'all want, I'm happy to help, but that's your choice. And so, yeah, that's it.
So on the vision statement, I know we need a vision statement, but this is very keywordy.
Yeah, they usually are.
I get that, but it doesn't define, unless I just haven't read it, what small town roots are. Obviously, we know what strong schools are and safe neighborhoods are, but what does small town roots mean to Godly? Did y'all ever discuss what that is, or just,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, okay, so here's my problem is that yes, and but we were really trying to get, I trimmed this, we stayed on point with a lot of this stuff. So you can add all those bells and whistles to anything, that you want to do. We just tried to avoid that in a lot of ways. I focused most of our time and energy on inputs and getting people involved and then reporting out a lot of this stuff. So that can be, I just think that that's a good question. And that's like, I'm just seeing like, I don't know if the city has a Facebook page, but that's the kind of stuff that should be spinning off of this process, and a lot of times steering committees become long-range planning committees, or maybe they become your P&Z or something like that, and so that group kind of champions this stuff moving forward, and those are the types of questions that gets asked of the community, and you build on this, and like this is your starting point, but that's a perfect example of, yes, let's talk about that, And if you wanna change the vision statement, you know, that's okay. But they are usually keywordy, you know. And the reason for that is then you can point back and you can say, okay, friendly, how are we doing on friendly? You know, how are we doing? So every year, usually, a lot of cities will come back to this, I'm sorry, I skipped it. Where's my vision statement? Here. They'll come back to this every year, how are we doing? You know, and you wanna do, how are we doing on plans? And so you'll look at your goals, you'll look at your vision statement, you'll look at your project list. And how are we doing on all these things? This is who you see yourself being in 20 years. This isn't how you are today. But this is where you're moving. You're moving towards friendly community, small town roots, a reputation. Known for means your reputation, right? And then strong schools, safe neighborhoods. So those kind of keyword get you down to your priorities as you build community and culture in Godly. So how that gets expressed is kind of the next part of the story.
Okay, so it's not, that isn't defined in the plan?
No.
Okay.
There's on that page, it kind of summarizes it a little bit. It gives you a lot of information around it, above and below it, a little bit on how we got there. But it doesn't go into what, because I think that means probably something a little different to everybody. I remember in our conversations about that, we moved a lot of words around, and I think we went back and forth between small town feel and small town roots.
Well, that's my thing, is someone's family who's been here for 100 years, their small town roots are dairy farms
Yeah,
and nothing around.
yeah,
Whereas someone who's been here for 5 years, maybe what Godly is today, and I know we're looking 2040, but I don't know, I just feel like there should be something that kind of defines what we currently and how we see our small town roots staying and what they are.
yeah.
I mean, like you said, that could be done afterwards, it's just,
I think so, because I think the reason we moved from small town field to small town roots is exactly what you just said, is that the town's kind of evolving a little bit, but it's good to evolve, but you never want to forget where you came from. And so I think isn't that how we
I
evolved?
actually wanted small town feel, and I can't remember honestly why we chose roots over field. I can't remember why, but I know several of us did say small town feel.
There was a lot of discussion there, the small town, small town.
Yeah.
small towns.
Like, we knew that word had to be in there. And like that, I think that's the coolest thing. Every city's different, and some cities are big on the social media. Like, I saw they were doing surveys on Facebook. They just put questions out there. What do y'all think? You know, because they have people that can manage that, like they're full-time, they have a social media person on staff at the city, so they can just always be posting stuff and getting, because you get data points on all of that, which I love surveys online for that reason, is it gives you data points. And so there's just so much you can do with this to build that, and that builds identity. I think because you're evolving right now, you're kind of at a point of change in time. And so it's just gonna take time to work some of that stuff out, and you're building your identity, in the middle of building your identity. You don't really have it nailed down just yet. So letting people speak into that over time could be a cool amendment to add in this too. Like, we did a survey, we did all this stuff, and this is what people think these words mean. That'd be a cool thing to add.
I think we discussed as well, the wilderness, the enablingness, the family orientations of housing and businesses, supporting local, like that was, I think, what we were talking about in small town feel. It's what we're looking for, we know this road, but if we keep those roots where
Yeah.
you're sticking to some of that, then I think that's what we were hearing from people as we were talking about this.
did you come up with the Dark Sky Initiative?
That was not me.
I like that.
It's very costly, as Colorado.
It's not so bad. It's really not. The ordinances are really cheap. They're cheap to develop. The part that gets hard is, bless their hearts, in Austin. They have lighting. You don't have the authority to regulate lighting even in your town the way you used to. And so it's made it a chicken and egg where, I'm gonna get this wrong here. Basically, you can't apply to become dark sky certified unless you have a dark sky ordinance. But you can't regulate lighting in the state of Texas unless you're dark sky certified. And so a lot of cities there's just confusion in the law at that point. I think they cleared it up in the last session to where you can write your ordinance and pursue certification or something like that. But, yeah, So, but dark sky lighting can be a little more expensive. But if you're not building it and they are, because especially in your rural areas, you don't want like dark night. I love seeing the stars. Like I hate when I go and stay at my friend's house and I can't see stars anymore. I just hate that. So,
You
Yeah.
can see stars in San Antonio?
I live in the country. I don't live, yeah. I'm not a city mouse anymore.
Yeah, Greg.
Dark Sky Initiative, fees can get assessed to the residents. I paid $9 a month and it had step increases. So that's a fee that your residents can expect to pay,
Yeah.
monthly fee. It's not free. So it'll assess more fees to the residents.
That's a good point. Any other questions or anything else you want to talk about? I'm so sorry that my sound is so pitiful tonight.
So what would it take to change the city core? The difference between the city core and the core residential sector to make the pink section along 917/Main Street and wrap that residential sector around to where the current houses are?
Let me put the map up, and then I'm gonna give you the laser pointer so you can show me what you're talking about, so I can be clear. Because I had an answer for you till you kept, and I was like, wait, no, I don't understand. Okay, take this, and the top button here shows is the laser one.
Alright, so right around here, so you got Hadley Farms over here. This is open land up here. Right here I can see as pink, but all of this is houses right here.
Yeah,
So I don't see that going into the new downtown area like you described earlier. I can see it right along where the park is, the church. There's an empty lot right next to the church. But other than that, there's nowhere to really grow a city center.
well, you would be surprised when you look at an aerial map. And the thing is, so this is not, this isn't about existing stuff, right, on the ground now. This is about stuff coming in. And the way that I actually realize this is probably closer to a very, realistic and realizable idea was the fact that you've already had 2 applications coming in for rezonings in this area already. So that kind of indicates that, that's not too far off. It doesn't mean everything needs to be that at all. And these residences can and probably will always stay there. If you don't make this pink, you lock it in as residential and you limit the future of that area. And I don't think you want to do that because you really need an area in your city north of the tracks that's kind of your city center. And that justifies this Hadley Road connection, which I think you really, really, really need. And it creates a core area as a district, if you will. So I'd hesitate to break the pink up. I thought you meant extend the pink over into the blue. And I was like, no,
Oh,
not
no.
that. That's not what you're saying, right?
No.
Okay, I'll just make sure.
Less pink, more blue. That's
Okay.
what I was going.
I think, so the challenge, okay, I get what you're saying. And the challenge with that is that your city, this property, is already on the line here, and your city park is already over here. And you want that to be a part of the walkable, developable stuff. I think maybe, what we could maybe do is change the list of appropriate land uses. And maybe I put some type of, because compact residential, and it doesn't mean it has to be that small. Compact residential, just means that, but maybe if we add residential to the appropriate list, because the problem with the turquoise is it's just that. The turquoise doesn't allow anything else. Yeah, yeah.
There's more than just one lot that's empty in that area, isn't there, Michael?
Yeah.
There's Second and Graham.
I mean, they're that whole 5 lanes of
No, we don't talk about that land.
There's a lot of spots in there, and a lot of it's floodplain, and so floodplain can actually lead to amenity of some kind, so floodplain doesn't have to mean don't build on it, it can be amenity. but it opens you up to doing something special in this area. I have to cough again, I'm so sorry. It justifies the improvements that you really need for safety. Godly and Hadley needs improvement for safety reasons anyways. And this railroad crossing is just, that needs fixing. And so letting this be that, but you don't want to cut off your town center from your city park, one of your older historic churches and your city services. So that's kind of, you need continuity, you need a district, and your assets are on the far west edge of that. But you need the far east edge because of this road.
Cause like Hadley Road, Turkey Farm Road, whatever you wanna call it, Jimmy Singleton built, did you bring your charger?
I did this time, I did.
I mean, that's got houses going up all along it.
Yeah.
Then you got Hadley Farms on the other side of it.
Yeah, over here.
You've got 300 homes going south of Hadley Farms. You've got a potential RV park if it goes in next to that.
Yeah, okay, so here's what you always have to worry about, because big cities do this in their downtowns, like, what was it, like 20 years ago, every mayor was served a special glass Kool-Aid saying all their industrial downtown needs to be converted to like loft. Like every office, suddenly became residential, everybody needs to live downtown. So they lost a lot of their non-residential in their city cores, the big cities did, just because of how the market works, but it works at every scale here too. What you don't want to have happen is you get into a period of high level of residential development, because all this is market driven. So if you allow anything you want in that area, and just when you do that, you enter a period like this is a strong residential community development market, then this all gets built out as residences, and you haven't afforded yourself the ability to accommodate any of that specialty retail and that retail that you need north of the tracks. Because those things, you're gonna get more value, stability, more traffic, justification for investment in pedestrian infrastructure if all of that stuff becomes a district. If it's just like random properties here and there, you're never gonna get good sidewalks, you're not gonna get pedestrian-oriented buildings. It's just gonna be stripped out like any other place along any road. So if you wanna build off the floodplain, make this something special, make it more of a district, that's walkable, that people can come, hang out at. I think you mentioned having a cafe or a coffee shop, like that type of stuff. It's for locals. Like this is all for local businesses, local community to hang out at. You need it because of the intersection pressures and for community to have a place to go. So the only thing like I said, we can add residential to this list, but once you do that, if you start getting a bunch of applications in for these bigger undeveloped pieces here that are just more subdivisions, you've lost your window for specialty commercial in your city. And so, that's the reason it's not prohibited, I mean, obviously there's tons of houses in there. I shouldn't put it here because of that. The second you say that, then the next subdivision developer is gonna come in here, lay down a plat application for, whatever. And I don't think that's the best use of that area.
I mean, but at the same time, I'd rather see single-family residential than apartments and townhomes in those areas.
Okay. So the challenge is your preferred uses being this. What type of residence type of development supports it is this. And Dina alluded to earlier, this has been the hardest part to this whole project is where this should go. And you can't just say outside my city, which is what, it's a split because some people, it depended on the group I was talking to. I had one group through one process where all they were telling me is, we need more housing options in Godly. And then the next group, we don't need any of that in Godly. And so there's a lot of strong opinions about these things in town. So I was trying to be really respectful of that. And if you'll notice, this is the only place in the city where these are, compact residential may be allowed in another place. Yeah, here. That's the only one that's allowed, and these other things is just allowed here. And so, like if you took these off, where are they gonna go? It kind of became that. And you need that kind of stuff in your city because those are the people that are gonna be in that cafe every morning. Those are the people that are gonna be eating at those restaurants and walking on the sidewalks and supporting those local businesses because they live right there. So that's just part of the tension of it is where's the right place from a land use perspective to accommodate those types of uses in a city, and it's usually in the center.
Is there another revenue benefit to, any of this? Like, do you get any, I mean, you're not gonna get any sales tax from an apartment building, right? But do you generate any other income that way?
Yeah, I mean, so typically your land value at a square footage basis is way higher for these types of uses than it is. Single-family residential, unless it's custom home, is a loss, you lose money on those. So every time a person builds a starter home neighborhood, every single, you just red, in the red, in the red, in the red, and you lose money on every single one of those lots as a city. Because your cost to service them is higher than the ad valorem values of the property. It's changing now because of our crazy housing market, so, but in general, that's how you have to think about it. You're gonna generate more on a cost per square foot basis the more dense you get. So from an economic perspective, this is right, 100% right. Socially and culturally, for godly, this is really hard. So that's kind of the tension we're at, and I recognize that fully. But economically speaking, this is all 100% right, and what you've gotta do, like, now, absolutely. Culturally, socially, for here, that's a tough pill to swallow. So what we could also do, if you want, actually, what if, like, I actually think we could move mixed use, and I think mixed use you can move down here as a special project. I hesitate, I just don't think you can say, anytime anybody wants to build anything other than single family, they have to come in for a special use. I don't think you can do
Roger
that.
would like that.
So I know, but, I
Can
mean,
you remind us what
and
that
again, you
mixed-use
guys have-
commercial is?
it's not a by right, like, they have to meet certain other requirements, and they might not be approved for it. So there's another fee involved, all this kind of stuff. So, I think, because again, going back to, this is just appropriate, and then based on this, you go over this other thing over here, so they have to pass a lot of tests before it actually is something that you actually want. And so this just gets them through the gate, if you think of it that way. This gets them through the gate, and then they have to go to that table, you have to look at balances of uses, you have to make sure they're not, you know, creating undue pressure, and then you guys have discretionary board retail too. So, there's a lot of steps in there, that are protective in nature, and I wrote them in, like I said, this is a really unique plan, because it does a lot of things that the bigger cities have to do, because they have large land area, but you guys have real specific concerns and want that ability to protect yourselves from certain things, so you're using some of the tools that other small towns don't necessarily use. So, all that to say, I think if they move mixed, I don't know. If, I hesitate to say that no multifamily or compact residential is allowed anywhere in the city except for as conditional use. I don't think they should do that.
No, I think you're gonna run into federal issues with that and also some state law issues. And you'll even see, for example, low-income housing tax credit project might come in, and they have all kinds of laws that would protect them. And so if you had an ordinance that said absolutely no multifamily anywhere, I mean, you're definitely gonna have some lawsuits on your hands.
So what kind of zoning do we look at, off of Chisholm? I know there's I can't think of the place, but they have the businesses down below, the multifamily up above. Does that fit into any of our zoning if we chose on the multifamily sections to push that? We want
Right.
commercial below and
And
multifamily
that's
above.
a great, like, I love Hico, y'all, I love Hico so much, and I think they're doing such a good job of revitalizing their town. And there's other towns around the state that are doing that too, and we want good retail, boutique-y stuff on the
Yep.
first floor with lofts above it.
Restaurants, that type of stuff.
But built to, and, sorry, I lost that, I'll plug it in a minute. But, someone in my profession, one of my colleagues said one time, I said, the most genius thing I ever said is it's the difference between building 20-year buildings and 100-year buildings. And I've said it before, that the dimensional standards for your zoning do nothing to ensure the quality of your community. Your design standards do that. And in answer to your question, that would be a mixed-use project. And I think we could move mixed use to be project, like special project designation, because it is a mixture of uses. I think they could get away with that, but maybe just leave the multifamily compact residential in that just appropriate category and bump, I'll plug it into.
But that's what I'm asking, instead of just having multifamily, if it counts, agrees as a whole, can we not put just apartment buildings there and make it multi? mixed use?
Isn't there something already approved?
Like a
for that area?
multifamily mixed use.
Well, like with the commercial down below, and so you're getting,
Sales tax.
yeah.
But the challenge
Yeah,
is
you
that's
have
not,
a reason to want it.
you can't equate the two uses.
So
Mixed
instead of
use
just
and
going to the
multifamily are not the same.
And
So
that
you
way
can't
get more
substitute
high-end
one for the other.
builders also, because in order.
You mean legality wise, right?
Yeah, so they're just, because they're financed different ways, they're different products completely. And so like a multifamily person would never probably build a mixed-use project. And
That's the
so,
point.
yeah, and that's where the problem comes in.
So
They're
that's what I'm
great.
asking, as a council, can we tell, in those multifamily, can we tell just an apartment building, no, we are saving, we want that for the mixed-use commercial, you want apartment buildings, and you have to adhere to commercial on bottom, and it's an incentive,
Right.
one, you're gonna get a better quality,
Yeah.
builder, two, we're going to get sales tax,
Yeah.
so it benefits, it applies the use that we
Yeah.
need, but it also benefits the city for that commercial use. Is that something we can look at instead of just someone coming saying, well, you have it for multifamily, we wanna build an apartment building?
Yeah,
Can we say no?
I think that you need to avoid anything that would be perceived as a moratorium on multifamily. I think a lot of, and there is a process for doing that moratorium just for short time periods, right?
Mhm.
But not as a official policy or zoning to do a moratorium on multifamily. If you're talking about like a mixed-use residential, like multifamily with commercial on bottom,
Mhm.
I think a lot of your developers, at least my experience right now, today, is that they're gonna have all kinds of objections with that, unless you have some sort of incentive
Yeah.
that will allow them to make that bottom floor commercial feasible. So you could have a zoning category that would do that, but I think you'd still have to keep some options open just for multifamily, because otherwise, they're gonna say, look, the market can never bear commercial on the bottom and godly with multifamily on top without additional incentives from the city.
I just
So-
don't know if I like it in the heart of our city. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
my personal opinion,
Yeah.
that, yes, there should be, and I mean,
Yeah.
I agree
Mhm.
that there should be areas, but to put that in, right in our downtown where you wanna build
I
all the
think the way I always
multifamily,
deal
that's
with
just.
that is, again, I go back to design every time, because that is, what he said is very true, and you're always, there's this protective side of, wisdom says, I don't wanna get sued, unless I do think of, what am I gonna go to the mat for? But you can put standards in for parking requirements, like if you required structured parking for all multifamily, bye-bye, cause who's gonna build that here? And so, so through your design standards, you're gonna be able to discourage things in certain ways or encourage them to come out in certain ways.
So what is the difference in you saying that to a parking garage versus we want business, we want commercial use on the bottom? What's the difference? I mean, you're still putting requirements down on them that they have to build a commercial garage.
Yeah, so when you're looking at those kinds of design standards, well, first of all, you have to remember, I mean, there are some preemptions on aesthetic features and also on materials,
Mhm.
okay? And so if they're gonna come in and you're gonna say, look, this is our design standard and it's not economically feasible for anyone to do, some of them are just gonna come in and say, I'm gonna do what the law allows me to do. And which means you're gonna get 100% siding on every single building for 3 or 4 stories tall. And if it fits within a zoning category or what the law authorizes, then that's all you're gonna get. So you can establish design standards as like guideposts, but the best way to really effectively impose those standards is to get them to agree to them. And you get them to agree to them through creating a TERS, creating
Yeah.
PIDs. Some cities like an MMD. I don't like an MMD because I think it takes away some of your power and authority, but there are all kinds of options that you can do that. And to incentivize the kind of design and materials that you want and the look that you want for your city.
Yeah. And I don't think y'all have, I mean, I know this kind of looks like a big area, but for like large-scale, real multifamily stuff, that's not there's so much floodplain in there, and there is so much parking requirement for a true multifamily project that I don't see the concern for that garden style, you know, we have 5 or 6 or 7 different buildings, you know, you're not gonna get that type of apartment in this area. It might be a city block, but if you're requiring everything to be parked on site, there's some constraint to what can be built there. And if you have height restrictions on things, which as of now they can still do, who knows after next session, but, so, and again, you have right of denial for some of these things. I think too, when you do the zoning code, you don't have a lot of these things spelled out, and so you don't have standards for pedestrian-oriented development, where you have buildings pulled up to the street and sidewalks and parking around back and all these things. You don't have a mixed-use category in place, and so you're not given the ability to say yes or no with confidence, because it's pretty binary right now. It's either single-family or multifamily, you know what I mean? And there's not a lot of shades in between.
So how do we, if we choose as a council to create an area for mixed use like that, can we do that?
Yeah, you can create a zone for that. Like this
Yeah.
this is gonna be hatched, like your zoning map is not gonna be one big blob like that. Your zoning map's
Right.
gonna go in and zone, every single parcel in town is gonna be assigned a zoning category. And so
But
there'll be
do
zoning
we need to
districts.
decide that before this is adopted?
Ooh, that'll
No.
come after.
You need this.
This is not a zoning, this is not control your zoning. So, but it does open the door, like she said, to some cover for you. I mean, it gives you a vision, and also it allows you to adopt some parkland fees. So you gotta have a comprehensive plan for that, and then it does tie into impact fees as well. So it's gonna open the door to you getting some of that money back from development that you otherwise wouldn't get.
Thank you.
During our meeting, we talked about the multifamilies on 171 on the ends.
Yeah, we did. We talked, and we included it, oh shoot, you picked the one district I didn't put on here. So, let me go back to the big map. The blue area, again, anything outside the city limits, you have no control over uses, like, except for special exceptions, which I don't think any of which apply to you. So, the blue area and the orange area are outside of your city limits. So if someone wants to build apartments out there, they're gonna do it tomorrow. You have no control over that, as long as they meet the subdivision requirements of your community and infrastructure requirements. But from a land use perspective, you don't have any control over that. But, so in that case, what the plan does is show preferred, that's why preferred uses and allowed uses become important outside of the city in those areas. Like Godly, I mean, a lot of this area up here is outside the city limits, but it's where a lot of people live and are building now. So these types of uses show this is what the city wants to see out there in certain places. We're open to special projects of this nature here, and then we're targeting this as our use, but, because this relates to infrastructure and capacity. So as you do update to your water or wastewater master plan, and as you do your thoroughfare plan, you know, your roadway classification systems, and start looking at traffic impact mitigation, this is the type of stuff that becomes important for planning for all that growth. And so to Dennis's point, so we did say, that multifamily would actually be appropriate in this blue area down here, because in all reality, that stretch between Cleburne and Godly is gonna get smaller, and, you know, there's just a lot of stuff that's gonna happen on here. This is a super problematic district though, because the parcel configuration is really irregular. There's only about 3 or 4 properties along there that are big enough to actually build a conventional multifamily project. The last thing you wanna do is encourage any type of density out in this orange area. This is supposed to be rural, and so you want dark sky, you want to see country, you want to preserve the view shed. And so you don't want, wherever those rooftops go, you're gonna get gas station, you're gonna get childcare, you're gonna get convenience store, you know, you're gonna get supportive services and other things that are gonna go off of that. So wherever you put multifamily, other things tend to follow. So when you see multifamily built out in the middle of nowhere, that's basically laying the line for where growth is gonna go. And so that's reason 1 million why it's always good to kind of keep it in the hub of your town.
So in the transitional, I don't see our city center being our city center anymore,
Okay,
in the future. As soon as Trenton builds out his development, that will be our city center. That'll be the hub of Godly. Just because it's got an amphitheater, it's got parks, it's got everything
Yeah.
you would want in a city center. It's got all the businesses, so.
well, that's great well then long term, it's great if you did this improvement here, because then you would capture a bigger area. because the challenge with that is it's right at the city limits. And so, like I said earlier, if this becomes commercial, that you just say bye-bye to all your sales tax the minute that happens. So, yes, I agree with you, that's very likely that that's gonna become a major center in the city. No city wants just one center activity center. I mean, you have the high school out here is one form of activity center, so you're gonna have commercial centers, you're gonna have civic centers, you're gonna have different types of activity. As you grow, there's not just gonna be one thing. And so the fact that everything is kind of oriented in this area is actually great. It would be cool if you guys could, we talked, all the consultants got on the call, we were talking about it, is, best case scenario for Godly, from a traffic management position would be to work with TxDOT to flip to where 917 flips Main and Hadley online, offline with TxDOT. And then you guys that work with them, they say okay to that and make all these improvements for you. That would give you everything that people are looking to do with the bypass without sacrificing the hub area of your town. So I love that his project's going in there, and I agree with you, I think it's gonna do a lot for your town. I would aggressively pursue annexation with anything around that area though, just to give you the additional controls, to allow that to give you an additional level of benefit other than just cultural and social.
So once Trinin's is all built out, my parents are going commercial next door. Then you have commercial, tree farm, empty lot. I mean, so it's basically all commercial down that way
Yeah.
anyways.
And industrial, some industrial
Yeah.
in too, yeah.
Now there, in the orange where you say you wanna keep it dark sky and all that, I can guarantee you that will not happen because a big box store has already bought land up there.
See, yeah. It's very difficult to restrain development. It's the reason why in the comp plan it showed, like in the framework section, this big, giant, massive blue bubble coming down from Metroplex towards Godly. It's very difficult to push that off. I remember, I must show my age, but I do remember when Frisco was 2,500 people, and I remember when Prosper, before the tollway went past LBJ, and it's very difficult to combat that. You just don't want to roll out the red carpet and make it easy for them, and things like putting in new highway infrastructure, building your service areas out to reach that, things that help, you're not going to be able to turn it all away, you wish you could, I wish I could, but you don't want to make it any easier for them than you have to. So little things like putting a dark sky ordinance in place, it's like, yeah, you can build here, but yeah, I want you to do these things to do your part. And with Bernie, we created an overlay, a scenic corridor overlay that increased along their major highway, increased their setbacks and made their building heights a function of setback from the highway, and made viewshed analysis a part of their site planning. So you can do things like that, but that's like a level 2 or level 3. So we got to start with this, and then y'all are going to keep getting more and more sophisticated with your incentive packages. 100% agree with that. Now that you have an EDC, you can work on those things. This is like your starting stepping stone, and then you're going to add incentives, and you're going to add standards, and you're going to add overlays, and all of these other things. It just takes time. So it's good to be thinking of those things to do in the future to rein things back in, and how can we do it better, and what can we do next?
So since my vision just of how Godly's progressed, if Trinin's development is the new hub, then wouldn't it be more fitting to put that commercial with residential upstairs or multifamily in that transitional zone rather than the city center?
But where do you have for that? Because this area is so again, this is your city limit right here. So the red is the end of everything that we're talking about, from red to red. That's not a lot of property.
Mm-hmm.
And there's homes on certain, that you're really limited on that. And so I don't,
Well,
and you don't want your center out on the highway like that. You just don't, because all of your people live up on that's the whole point. They live on the north. You need something north of the tracks. You can't be forcing people to 2 or 3 congested intersections to get everything they need along the highway. It's just, that's gonna create, that's a mess. If everything people need to buy and do is on this side of the tracks, and everybody lives on this side of the tracks, and then there's only 2 or 3 places to cross, that's a mess. Now, when you get a trail in here, and if you get both sides playing off of each other, that's something special. And, you can do that in 2 different places. I see Main Street doing that, once the, what is that, wastewater down there? Once that moves away, and then Trinity's new property here, Hadley can become a crossover, so then you have some penetration and some some dialogue between the north and south, but you don't wanna put everything south of the tracks and have everybody living north of the tracks having to cross those intersections all the time. That's a mess. So that's the whole point of that pink area, is we need something that is commercial, that's local, not like big commercial. We're talking local level, coffee shop commercial, north of the tracks, around a downtown area, so we can create a center for the city. Doesn't mean there can't be other centers and things all over town. There's probably, I know there's already stuff going in up here along 2331 that's non-residential. And you're gonna keep seeing that. You're gonna keep seeing stuff here along the highway. Excuse me. But it is really important to create some place people can get together and come to that's north of those tracks. Like I said, it'd be great to have there be some improved dialogue between the two sides. That'd be wonderful. But you definitely need something up here on the north.
So for the north side of the tracks, why did you label that employment zone?
Oh, that's
Our
the place
sector.
that's, yeah, because these intersections. Because if you develop this, that's industrial and agriculture predominantly. So it's currently industrial and agriculture. There are no tracks other than, is it Railroad Street or Railroad Avenue, way up here? I think it's Railroad Avenue. Yeah, and then Pearson. And so and all of this residential traffic is funneling down to those two intersections. And so the worst thing you could possibly do is create commercial or residential traffic along the tracks to add to those two intersections. And so the thought is, because you have the capacity, you have more capacity than you have demand right now. Like you have capacity for everything. It's just where you want things to go. And so this needs to be things that have low trip generation, that generate lower traffic counts. And so leaving it what it is now is the best from a traffic standpoint. And there's also no other place within your city that can accommodate that stuff. So it's an existing use, it generates low levels of traffic, so you're doing right by your intersections. And you need something related to employment somewhere inside the city. Oh, sorry, this map has been updated. This is an old version, as per your comment about things. So the final version has this purple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So TxDOT is looking at redoing 1001, which is at the purple and brown,
Uh-huh.
because they didn't realize that there are apartments or a new subdivision going in, or the DR Horton subdivision going
Yeah.
in further.
Yeah. So they're gonna redo that intersection?
They're looking at it. They haven't led a project or anything, but
If you can vote for, y'all need to be like all in on intersections. Like seriously, railroad intersection projects should be like one of the big, you should be, every time they mention it, let's have lunch. Because that's gonna be, I mean, can you imagine, like back here at the beginning when we looked at the yellows, come on, it's longer than I thought. I mean, so you think about once all of this gets built out, and that's just from what, a year and a half ago? No, a year ago. No, I think it was a year and a half ago. It was early 2022 when they sent me this. So there's probably been stuff since then, but all of this traffic, going down to just 2 or 3 different intersections, and Hadley's not an awesome intersection. So really you have Main, Pearson, and that Railroad Avenue accommodating all of these subdivisions up here. There's just a lot of intersection pressure, so.
if I send you a new shape file, can we update that?
Yeah, but this is just an illustrative graphic, so. But I'll need, excuse me. We'll need to know that. I don't know if this is something in the plan or not. I think I just did this for y'all.
Yeah, there's quite a bit more
Yeah,
now, so.
this is just to, as of this year, because I had that back then. But yeah, I mean, those intersections are a real challenge, and balancing, the tendency is to just stick all the commercial along the highway and then all the residences up here in the place where it's easy to develop. And that's just not, with that track there, you just can't do that. You've got to get some commercial north of the intersection there, and get those intersections to function better. It's gonna be hard. Any other questions? Y'all are gonna have to tell me when you're done, because I could talk about this all night. There's a lot in
Me
here, I
too.
know. So what do y'all think about the dates for comments? Do you have opinions on that?
say, we all talked another 45 minutes past saying that we thought we needed more time. Do we still feel like we need more time?
Mine is just more for a review for clerical stuff, like I found. If that wasn't found already, what else has not been found? That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
finish going through it. But, I mean, as far as the understanding of it, I'm fine with that. It's just more of the clerical
Okay.
type stuff that needs to be looked at.
I would say first meeting in January, we should have all of our comments, well, I guess a week before that, so that way you can work with it, and the second meeting in January, we vote on it.
Sounds good.
Okay, and that would give y'all till the 5th, which that, because I don't know about y'all, it's this time vortex over the holidays, you know, you think, I'm gonna have all this time, and then you end up with nothing, so I think the 5th, because as long as I can get them by then, that'll give me a week to work on them, and then come back up here on the 16th, and nothing is set till it's adopted, y'all know that, and even after it's adopted, you can change it, so even at that meeting, like, when you make motions, because Dean will help you word motions, you know, to bring, you know, so y'all know that, so, just keep that in mind.
So I do have one more question.
Yeah.
You weren't here most of this. What's your opinion on it? Do you have an opinion yet, or?
That's a good question.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of planning to go through this, and there were a lot of cities that I worked in before that they didn't keep up with their comprehensive plan. So if it's something that we're gonna use, it needs to be used. It doesn't need to be put on a shelf to catch dust.
No.
And so with that said, the next thing is really majorly needing is the zoning, not the map. We need something done with the zoning ordinance. And then that way we can get the map and those can work together. Cause we're really having a hard time right now without any good zoning ordinances. So I think this is a good first step. Just like she said, we've gotta start somewhere. And so that does help.
Is there anything you would want changed?
Where you're talking about the downtown, or well, what I would call downtown,
Yeah.
because this is a walkable town to me.
Yeah,
I'm from Weatherford, that's where I raised my kids, it was a walkable town. And to me, that's what y'all have, and you have really what all these cities are building a downtown square, but you've already got it. And so if you're gonna build onto it, I think, entertainment is a huge thing in Granbury and all the cities that you talked about. Restaurants, and further back in that area, you can do a transitional where you have attorney offices.
Yep.
Or a small, CPA's office that's in, an existing house right now, where they take the older houses and turn them into those kind of things. So I can see that, and I walk this city every day when I come to work, go to the post office every day, go to the restaurant every day. So, and I love that about this, and so I don't want that to just go away.
yeah.
I think that's unique for here.
And your block this is all urban design you talk, but the block configuration around this area, it really lends itself, because they're short blocks.
Yes.
And so it's real easy to get around from thing to thing.
To the
Yeah.
post office, to lunch, to wherever. And I love that about this. I love that part about the downtown area. That's what I call it, downtown. But I think this is a good start. It's a good foundation to set. Absolutely.
This is just as much your city as it is ours, so I just wanted to ask.
Is this on our website? People can,
Yes, sir.
everybody interested can look at it?
Yes, sir, and I'll add, I'll put, I wasn't sure what we were gonna do tonight, so, I will put their version on our, but the website's, that gets back to the question, the website's going down, on the city website.
I was thinking, say, can we just migrate it over to ours?
Yeah, okay, so, and just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, do we shut down the project website? In other words, do I not renew that subscription for another year? I don't think you're gonna need it, but y'all tell me what you wanna do.
I think
So,
we're,
go.
I think
Let it
we're
go,
good with
definitely.
letting it go and
Okay.
not maintaining that, and anything we need to post, we can put it to the city.
Okay, we've
city
already
page.
downloaded all of our, I assumed that, so we downloaded all of our files. I'll then, we'll do a run-through summary of everything we talked about tonight, and then I'll give you everything that has to go there, and then we can, I guess, put this version for tonight, right? Okay, up on the website.
So is the domain expiring? Yes.
Yeah, that's why I had to get clarification, I didn't know what you wanted to do with that, so. Since it's project specific, you know what I mean, I was like,
Is that something the city wants to just hold on to since it's such a nominal cost? Just in case as we do more plans, it can be godlyplan.com. Otherwise, somebody's gonna grab it up.
That's a good point. That
I mean,
might be
you're
a good
talking
idea.
$20-25 a year
Exactly.
for a .com.
so my question on this, because I'm not an IT guru, to migrating that domain, transferring a domain, I don't know who I need to follow up with on how to do that.
Who's it registered through?
Mosaic.
Well, I mean, like GoDaddy or Name Pros
Oh, I don't
or-
even remember. I have not, maybe Wix? Would they have used who?
Yeah, they're a reseller.
Okay,
We would just need to create a Wix account and then you basically transfer it over to us and then we renew it.
Of course, we could just do a subdomain off the Godly's website too. godlyplan.godlytx.gov.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know how much traffic flows to that. I guess I could,
not a lot. I don't, not a lot. I mean, it's, like I said, we had 150 subscribers. There's not a lot of traffic past that. We get like, it's basically the people in this project that have been involved in this the whole time.
alright, so us losing the domain won't really matter.
I don't think so. I don't think too much, so, and the other thing, I mean, your question was so good about the vision stuff, because you guys are evolving right now. You're just you're starting on this new era, and not to be dramatic, but you really are. And so this kind of stuff is gonna get fleshed out more in coming years, and you're gonna get committees and commissions and other groups of people, or y'all have been doing all the heavy lifting for so long. There's gonna be other groups now that are gonna help you do stuff, you're gonna have staff and all this, and so this is gonna get fleshed out more. You're gonna end up with something like that, I don't know. And every city has different social media, some people are really into YouTube, some other cities are really into Facebook, whatever it is, but for outreach purposes, being able to do that, that's another platform that all of this can be kind of put out there on.
So do we need to make a motion to postpone it to the 16th?
Yes, if we're gonna put comments and questions in by the 5th to her, our next meeting after that would be the 16th.
Dean, I have one question before we do that. So since in the ordinance it says public hearing, do we have to advertise that public hearing? Or can we just open it up for public hearing?
Yeah, chapter 213 doesn't require you to advertise. You can just open up for public hearing and, we can add some language that will make it more specific on there for everyone.
I'd like to make a motion to postpone the Godly Comprehensive Plan till the meeting on the 16th.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Alderwoman Rodriguez to postpone action on the Godly Comprehensive Plan until the 16th, and a second by Alderman Pappenfuss. Any further discussion? Alderman Yarborough?
Aye.
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 Motion is passed 5-0 to postpone any action on the comprehensive plan till the 16th.
Thank you, Carissa.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
And thank you to the steering committee also for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Going on to B, discussion and possible action on approving and adopting resolution number 12.2023-03, the purchasing policies and procedures for employees of the city and providing an effective date.
The purchasing policy and procurement plan or policy and procedure for the employees of the city was given to you probably, I don't know, at least a month ago, maybe. And I do have two things I need to point out on that. the purchasing that the council approved for the city administrator was up to 15,000. This is just quoting state law, so I can make that adjustment on, throughout here where it says from 15,000 to 49,999, and put that at 15,000 to bring those to the council. But I think that this plan, is something that we absolutely need to start using in the city. There's no, procedures on how purchases are made. Our directors have a credit card to purchase things, and they do their statements, and true up their statements with their receipts. So that's being done, but we've been kind of walking them through how I would like to see the purchasing and the procedures done by city employees. I've used this same policy in several different cities. It's been successful. It's following, like I said, it's just following the purchasing procurement of the Texas Local Government Code. So basically, that's what it is. And if you have some questions about it, I'll be happy to answer. But I would recommend that we do approve this and adopt the resolution to put this in place.
Could you tell me again which part you were wanting to edit? You said for the amount?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's on the first page
Mhm.
where it talks about the requisitions for purchases.
Mm-hmm.
And it says required by the department director and city administrator. That wouldn't be to 49,999, it'd just be to 15,000.
That would be item 11, correct?
Yeah, so, because y'all set a cap for me at $15,000 on purchasing. And so where it goes up past that, and then the next one will be, on the basic guidelines for purchasing, and it gives you, you know, a penny to $2,999, the credit card approver. There's no bid required, and it's signed by a department head. I would change that also and cap that at 15,000 for the city administrator as well.
And that's on page 6, correct?
I think so.
So on page 1, number 9, it says 3 verbal or internet vendor quotes, and then 10 says 3 written vendor quotes. Can we not, just to simplify this, combine 9 and 10 to make it from 3,000 to 14,999, and they require written vendor quotes? Just to simplify it for the department heads.
On the department heads, on the 14,999?
On 9 and 10, just combine those to make it from 3,000 to 14,999,
Can?
and just make it written vendor quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no problem. Is the internet vendor quote the same thing as, written?
And basically what a lot of your directors are doing now is they're using the buy board a lot and tips. So those are state contracts, so they really don't even have to go through the quotes. But in case they do run into something, they've got this. So,
Do you periodically audit, audit these purchases, the ones that don't, you know, say for example, the $29.99 and less?
on the credit card purchases?
I'm not sure if they're credit card purchases or not. I'm looking
Well, I
at
mean,
page 2,
on those
department heads
purchases-
have authority to approve purchases for $29.99 and less.
Well,
I was
right
just
now-
curious if you if you were planning on auditing those to make sure we're not buying, and I don't doubt this will never happen, but you know, you don't want it.
I'm doing the
3,000
payables as it is.
You what?
So I do the payables right now. So basically all of the invoices come to me. And so I always have a question on them.
Okay.
W-9s need to be filled out for our vendors. I'm just trying to get us prepared and prepped so that when we have auditors come in, that we're kind of doing this consistently. And so, yeah, so basically I do look at all of the invoices that come through.
So we don't have, like, for example, you're looking to have a vendor list that we would use consistently.
No, I ask them to always make sure that we have a W-9 so that we have vendors on file. Prior administration, there was not a lot of information about your vendors out there.
Right.
And so we need that vendor information for the auditors.
Are you talking
They
about a
can pull
preferred vendor
random.
list?
Yeah, you know, you don't wanna be buying $500 hammers. Not that that would happen, but I'm assuming that you're gonna see that, and you're gonna go, you know, maybe you ought to go check another vendor.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's another
Right.
question.
And I know they shop local, although we did just recently apply for a Home Depot credit card. Reason being is because you can get better prices there, and it's much more reasonable on some of the items that Public Works might be purchasing. So, but they do buy local when they can.
Well, you get a kickback on the sales tax revenue for that.
Yes.
It's true. It's true.
Aren't we exempt?
So say, we don't
Yeah,
pay
we're
sales tax.
exempt.
so we
No,
don't
their
get it.
sales tax revenue, they have to pay to the city.
Yeah, but we have to pay them sales tax to get it back. No,
There'll
we're
be no
taxed
kickback
too.
for our purchases.
No, I have to pay, I don't pay, if I charged you something, I don't charge you sales tax for anything for the city, but I still pay to the comptroller, and you guys get that sales tax money
Mhm.
for everything that I charge my customers, is what I'm saying. So if we buy local, you know, depending, then we get a kickback on the sales tax revenue, in that sense.
So on 10, our department heads don't have, and I know that we're combining them, but, they don't have up to 15,000, right? So do we need to change that to 3,000 then? Is that what their limit is?
Are you saying item 10?
9 and 10 on the first page. I know we're combining those.
Yes.
One of them says purchases 3 to 4,999.
Right.
The other one says 5 to 14,999, and I do know that our department heads cannot approve up to 14,999.
Right.
Well,
But
POs
it-
must be issued for that amount though.
But a PO comes in, and so I would have to approve it.
Okay.
So on the PO, and I just might need help in understanding who the people are. It talks about things going to the finance department. Do we have a finance department?
That'd be me.
And who's our accounts payable clerk?
That would be me
Okay.
at this point. But your directors are responsible for getting the PO, and what we've done is designated that over to Brittany so that I have a little bit of a, because auditors are gonna wanna see a break
Right.
in those things. So they get those from Brittany, she signs off on that, and then all of it comes to me to approve.
It was just having so many
I know.
new positions and departments
Yeah,
was,
we're just trying to break up the jobs on that so that it doesn't look like I just do all of the handling of the money, cause I don't. Because we do have to have 2 signatures for checks now. If we pay anything online, through ACH, it comes through me and then it goes to her to approve, and then it comes back to me, so that I know it's been approved. So we have checks and balances now. So,
My only other question was, in the absence of the city administrator designee, but I did not see a designee defined anywhere, so at that point, who would define a designee?
I would define that as the city secretary, until we do hire an accounts payable clerk or a finance director in the future.
Which we need.
But, I mean, presupposing your absence, then you would assign the designee then,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. So,
I take it this is a standard template you've used elsewhere, and that's why it's worded the way it is.
it worked. It worked at the last city that I worked at, a smaller city. It was good for purchasing and getting the directors to all handle their purchases the same way. And we always returned a pretty good audit on that, on these procedures.
So God forbid we have another massive walkout. There's nothing in here that gives the mayor authority to basically step into that office and do what you do. That
So-
concerns me.
Yeah, I can answer that. So this is a resolution. Doesn't trump the ordinance. So the ordinance, he still has all the regular powers of the mayor. This is a policy adoption pursuant to resolution. And we can take a look at with the changes that y'all are recommending. We can look at it again. And I'm just looking at chapter 252. That's your competitive bidding statute. And just so you know, like the $3,000 threshold, once you get $3,000 to $50,000, then you're looking on the hub website and you're trying to find historically underutilized businesses. And so there's some other little, legal thresholds requirements, and then you're looking at 2 bids. And so all this is consistent with state law, but if we're gonna collapse some of these categories, we can take a look at it again if y'all approve the resolution, and then subject to whatever changes you have.
I make a motion to accept the resolution for the purchasing policy with all the changes that we mentioned, and then we'll get a new copy of that, correct?
I'll second.
Have a motion by Alderwoman Rodriguez and second by Alderwoman Mize to approve resolution number 12-2023-03, purchasing policy procedures for the employees of the city and providing an effective date. We need to provide an effective date. Dave?
Dean,
Today, or,
Immediately?
what can't be
Yeah.
effective now if it's not tailored, right?
Effective upon signature? How's that?
yeah, well,
Well, that's when the effective date would be, is when it's
Right.
Looks like you're working
Can we
late.
have it effective today, and then pending the changes, we'll re-effect it at later?
yeah. I'm less concerned with an effective date in the context of a resolution than in ordinance.
All
Because
right,
you're not imposing a fine or a fee or anything like that. So if you want to make the effective date today subject to revisions. And then this is, of course, it's a policy, you can always bring it back. If you want to bring it back on a subsequent agenda and tighten it up, change it however you need to, add, more powers for people in case of emergencies or whatever it is, you can do that.
so effective today with the recommended changes. Any further discussion? Alderman Yarborough?
Aye.
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 Motion passes to approve the ordinance number 12-2023-105, effective today with the appropriate changes.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry,
still-
12-2023-03 with the approved changes. Now to C, discussion and possible action on approving and adopting ordinance number 12-2023-105, the records management policy, providing for filling with the director and librarian of the Texas State Library Archives Commission, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative of all ordinances, providing severability clause, and providing an effective date.
I'll make a motion to approve and adopt ordinance number 12-2023-105, the records management policy as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Alderman Pappenfuss and a second by Alderman Yarborough to approve adopting ordinance number 12-2023-105, the records management policy, providing for filling with the director and librarian of the Texas State Library Archives Commission, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative of all ordinances, providing severability clause, and being effective today. Any further discussion? Alderman Yarborough.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0 vote.
Let me just make one comment. It's nice to have professionals in the city, the last time we had an RMO was a lady named Linda Light. And that was back in the 90s. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate you.
both of you.
On to item D, discuss and possible action to approve the outfitting of the newly purchased Dodge Durangos for the Godly Police Department. Chief?
Hello, Mayor and Council. In y'all's packets, there's 3 quotes from Marshall, Stuff Inc., Cat Fleet, and Dana Supply. Dana Supply is the cheapest for outfitting the 3 Durangos. I recommend that we go with Marshall, mainly because Marshall is located here in Joshua, Texas. They're about $1,000 more expensive than Dana, but their turnaround rate is 30 to 45 days. Dana Supply is 90 to 120 days after they get all the equipment. Each quote is a breakdown of what they're going to do, and this is to outfit all 3 Durangos. And we'll be using the ARPA fund, the COVID relief fund as well for them.
The price is for all 3.
All 3, yes, sir.
Okay, not just for.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bid from Marshall's and take the funds out of the ARPA funds for the outfit in the newly purchased Dodge Durangos.
Second.
Have a motion by Alderwoman Rodriguez and a second by Alderman Yarborough to go with the Marshall's quote for outfitting the Dodge Durangos for the Godly Police Department utilizing ARPA funds. Is there any further discussion?
Couple questions. Did we, can't remember, whenever we went through tips to buy the Durangos, did we capital outlay or ARPA funds?
Capital outlay.
So there's 2 Durangos out there.
Third one should be here in January. They're waiting to get to Silsbee. Silsbee's then gonna transport to us.
Will they lock the price even though the 3rd one's not here?
It's already locked.
Any further discussion? Alderman Yarborough.
Aye.
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 Motion passes with a vote of 5-0. On to item E, discussion and possible action to approve the purchase of the laptops for the 3 newly purchased Godly Police Department Dodge Durangos for the purpose of communication with Johnson County.
Yes, the Durangos are gonna need laptops, in their vehicles to be able to communicate with, dispatch through emails. And with the new system coming, that is supposed to launch on October 1st of 2024, the dispatch will be able to actually send us a message on the screen saying, hey, this is what's going on, give us call notes of the active call in progress, so we're not going there blind on a disturbance or anything of that nature.
These were already approved, correct?
The
Through your
laptop?
budget?
No, these are part of outfitting / communications, which we're gonna use the ARPA funds as well for the laptops, for communications as well. This allows us to run TLETs, driver's license plates, and also communicate with Johnson County.
So these will be through ARPA funds also? Because in our notes, it does say it's been approved through the 2023-24 budget in October by the council.
The Durangos were approved.
Okay, my apologies.
So why aren't we reusing the ones out of the Explorers?
Because those are, first, they're not laptop MDTs. I don't even know what the brand are, and they're actually starting to go out. They're just that old. And Unit 5 doesn't even lock no more. You can actually just spin it and do a 360 with it.
So the laptops we're replacing are ones that are in the Explorers. Are they able to transfer with the new technology coming out next year, or Are they gonna?
The ones in the Explorers?
Yes,
No.
so they would be gone, they'd be non-usable come October anyway, correct?
They will not, according to what Toto Verde has told me, they will not be good to be used for police use. Now, we can repurpose them, like we can repurpose the Explorers for other departments, and they'll still work just fine, but police-wise, no.
We do have the funds available both for the outfitting and for the laptops and the ARPA funds.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion that we purchase the laptops, 3 laptops, for the Dodge Durangos, for the amount of $9,395.01, which will also include the docking station and warranty for 3 years through our ARPA fund.
Second.
I have a motion by Alderwoman Rodriguez and a second by Alderman Yarborough to approve the purchase of the 3 laptops for the Dodge Durangos, utilizing the ARPA funds for $9,395.01. Any further conversation, discussion?
How soon, are they expecting to deliver them to you? Pretty fast?
Hopefully pretty fast, we'll get the vendor member form, so they're all typed up, and then we send it to them. Once we all approve it, they start shipping.
Okay. And then at that point, I assume you're going to retire the other 3 laptops immediately. Where are they going to be
So
stored?
they're actually not laptops. They're actually computers. The last administration did, they're old style MTTs. So they're actually not even laptops. There's like a little box to take out. So that's why they cannot actually transfer over with this new system. They're so old.
Okay. Where, once you take them out, what are you gonna do with the 3? Like, where are you going to put them?
The 3 new,
The 3
Old?
old? Yeah.
we can actually leave them in and repurpose those Explorers with those MTTs for Public Works or
Or fire or
fire
something?
department. We can repurpose them. That would be y'all's call to, if y'all want to.
So
Our planning and zoning.
the 3 we're purchasing, though, is going into the 3 new vehicles.
Yes.
So there's nothing being removed out of these new vehicles. These are new installs, right?
Yes.
So the ones that you're talking about removing, those are gonna stay in the units they're currently in now. There's no
Yes, yeah.
sense of removing them.
We're not removing those.
Okay.
The only thing we're removing out of the 3 Explorers are the Motorola radios and the citation printers. 'Cause those are still brand new. So Marshall's gonna take those out and repurpose those to save money.
Did I see in the marshal's estimate they were pulling antennas and cabling? And that's all just for the Motorola, not for the...
Motorola and
Okay.
the Zebra printers.
And just for the record, the installation of those computers are also, says they're already in the quote, so we're not gonna be paying an additional for that.
So since we just adopted the procurement policy, how does it, I know TIPS is basically by board, but how does that play into, we need 3 written quotes since we only, since we only have 1 written quote and we just adopted that procurement policy up to 15,000, they need 3 written quotes?
Because this one
It's through TIPS.
is through TIPS, which would be going through the buy board. It's the state procurement.
Okay, I just didn't see anything, I didn't see anything in the procurement policy that said, okay, if it's not by board or TIPS or one of the other co-ops, then you have to have the POs, but if it is TIPS, by board or whatever, then you don't have to. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you also have council action if you choose tonight. So, I mean, you're never precluded from, as a body, council, approving contracts.
Any further discussion? Alderman Yarborough?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Chief.
On to item F. Discuss and take possible action on request for qualification RFQ for auditing services and forensic auditing services for the city of Godly, Texas.
Mayor Pro Tem asked that this be placed on the agenda, and so I wanted to let you know that, I notified council of your current auditors who have declined, or actually informed us that their decision to cease auditing services for the city. That was in November, around the 28th, when I sent the message to you about that. And so I immediately started working on an RFQ to start looking for auditing services and auditors who also will do a forensic audit as well, together. After I spoke to 3 different auditing firms, all 3 of them reassured me that in their audit process, if there were any red flags or any concerns that you have, we just pass those on, and then they go into the forensic audit. So that's kind of the direction I think we need to go. You only received 1 response on your forensic audit RFQ. So I think if you went with an auditor and let them get that started, and then they would go into the forensic audit where they dig a little bit deeper. So that's just my suggestion. The RFQ is here for you to look at, and there will be a publication that has to go out. And I'm determining that we'll probably, it'll be due January the 11th, and then that way it would be time for you to bring it to the council. We'll bring it to the council on January the 16th. Yeah, 16th at the council meeting. So if we issue it, what I'm calling issuing is you approving the RFQ tonight, and then we'll put it out and have it due by January the 11th, and then it'll come back to the council on the 16th. So that's about as quick as I can get that done.
Which you say we've posted, and we did get a response back from one, as a reason why we were not accepting that, we're gonna rerun it? Or is it
This was
something that
prior
we
to
all?
me getting here.
That was
That
decided
y'all
before
had
I was
the one.
elected to.
Yeah, that's what I'm
try
trying
and
to
get more-
remember.
More people to,
Mm-hmm.
What we wanted was more,
Response.
or what we voted on was to have more, just to solicit firms rather than sitting it on
Ah,
TML
gotcha.
or whatever, and then have one in person. Oh, hey, okay, I saw this. We were gonna solicit firms, that way we could get maybe some pricing,
Mhm.
but, so that's why that didn't happen then.
Okay.
Okay, so, number 1, how long had the other company been with the city?
The auditor.
I don't know.
Company that left? Do we have a contract with them, or is that something that was kind of like the city engineer, we just went with them, or do we have a contract with them?
We do not have a contract with them. They've been with, or we've been using them for quite a few years.
Why'd they quit?
I
They
don't
give a
know.
reason?
The letter that just states that they no longer, we're gonna do the auditing services here.
That's all it said in their letter.
That's all it said. I haven't seen a contract either.
No, we've looked.
Okay, with the RQ, where request for qualifications you're putting out now, are we putting out a request for an auditor to do our regular auditing, but also do a forensic audit, the same company do them both?
Mhm.
So they'll come through, look at something, and who's gonna determine, or how is it gonna be determined that kicks into a forensic audit?
Well, we'll put your concerns out, because they will send, information to the council where you have concerns at, and where you want them to look at. What are your concerns, and what areas are you wanting them to look deeper into?
And you also said that if they
And
come
it's a
across any
questionnaire.
red flags, then they'll dig
Yes.
deeper into that
And
also.
along with red flags. And I can just tell you, from me trying to find some information that I've been looking for, there's probably gonna be quite a few red flags. So no doubt they'll probably dig a little deeper
Okay.
into getting into a forensic audit. And that was just a recommendation, you know. We can go out for a separate, but then you're looking at 2 services, and you can use an auditor to do the same services.
Yeah.
Are you gonna solicit firms that you've used before, or are you just gonna put it out on?
I'm going to publish it, and I'm gonna put it on TML, and I'm going to solicit from some firms that I know of. I mean, that's the best way I know how to do it,
I like it.
so.
In the RFQ on page 6, number 4, it directs all questions and emails to the mayor pro tem. Should that not be you?
Oh, it probably should. We took this from the
That was
last
the
ones
last
that
one.
got it.
I figured, but just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we get stuff sent to the right.
Yeah,
So the others are filled in, right? Dates, times? What are the other?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So we're still good then.
yeah.